Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to Toronto East York Community Council. This is meeting number 31. We do have a number of items that are timed. Before we proceed to the order paper, the Chair and the members of Toronto East York Community Council gratefully acknowledge that we meet on the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat, and Toronto is home to many Indigenous diverse communities. Thank you very much, and welcome back, everyone. Just to recognize that we are proceeding, are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, thank you. Can I please have a mover to confirm the minutes of meeting February 21st, 2018? Councillor Perks. All those in favor? So moved. Thank you. There are lists of speakers printed on the green sheet, and I'd ask members of the public that if you are here to speak to any particular item on the agenda, please let yourself be known and identify yourself to clerks, and we will be able to add you onto this list. We will begin our meeting by going through the order paper of the items that are not timed. I will ask members of Community Council to turn to page 80. We are beginning on the Golden Rod, TE 31.49. 48? Where's 48? Oh, sorry, that's right. So page 77, my apologies, on the Goldenrod sheets, we are beginning with item TE 31.48, appointments to Business Improvement Area Boards of Management, wards 13, 18, 19, 20, 22, and 30. Do I have a mover? Okay, so move by Council. Oh, yeah. So Ward 13 doesn't belong to TYCC, so there will be a correction made there. But we'll have to fix the report. Okay, the report will be amended. And I have a mover, that's Councillor McMahon. All those in favor? Recommendations in the report. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. Now we're heading to page 80. TE 31.49, proposed official naming of two future parks at 190 and 250 Manor Road East, Ward 22. Councillor Matlow.
Well, obviously I move the recommendations, and I'll just speak very briefly just to let you know what we're doing. You may remember a couple of years ago we had a big fight to protect green space at the Glebe Manor Bowling Club, along with working very cordially with the Manor Road United Church to work out a deal to acquire green space and a new park at their site. We were successful with your support, and now we're moving ahead with the names. At the Glebe Manor Bowling Club, we're going to be calling it the Manor Community Green, and at the church site, we're going to be naming the park Cudmore Creek Park to celebrate the Lost River that runs beneath it along Foreman Avenue, and we're naming the playground after Mona Piper. Mona Piper was a dear friend of mine and a dear friend of the entire community. She just died in the past year, and Mona served our community as Toronto's longest serving crossing guard for 43 years. She originally was at the corner of Davisville and Cleveland, and then she moved to Millwood and Cleveland, and she didn't not only protected kids, the first generation of kids who went to Maurice Cody Public School, she then looked out for their kids, and then she looked out for their grandkids. So we love Mona, and our community couldn't think of a better way to celebrate her than to name a playground where our kids are going to be playing. So I would appreciate your support.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor, and congratulations to the local community and to you for all your hard work. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. T 31.50, 19 Duncan Public Art Plan, Ward 20.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll move the staff recommendations.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. T 31.51, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880, fire routes 20 Minowan Milken Lane, Ward 18.
Move staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. T 31.52, designation of fire routes and amendment to Chapter 880, fire routes 38 Bathurst Street, Ward 19.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. TE 31.53, Old East York Village, hydro pole relocation. There is a request to hold from Councillor Fragedakis. Okay.
Councillor, we are waiting, it's a notice of pending right now. There's a notice of a pending report. The proper report is on its way down.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
so
maybe if you explain.
there is a report. Obviously, this is a notice of a report that's still pending. The report is not before us as of yet. I have Councillor Fragedakis, and who can hold this with Councillor Fletcher.
Well, I'm holding because I want to see the report.
Yes, so we will be coming back to this matter, so it's held. TE 31.54, Davenport Triangle Guiding Principles, final report, Ward 20. Councillor Cressy has just left the room.
Nope.
Oh, sorry,
Right here.
sorry, I didn't see you.
On 5-4?
Yeah, you were very quiet.
Sorry about that. I'm going to move to defer this item for one cycle to the next meeting, please.
Okay, motion to defer for one meeting cycle. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.55, 141 Davisville Avenue, zoning amendment application preliminary report, Ward 22.
I'll move the report along with the extended notice area.
Motion's on the screen. All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? That carries. All those in favor of the report as amended? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. T 31.56, 2128 Yonge Street zoning amendment application preliminary report, Ward 22.
I'll move the staff recommendations along with the extended notice report and a notice to my family that we're going to need babysitters in the next while.
All those in favor of the motion on the screen? Any opposed? Item as amended? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. I hear there's some good childcare plans coming from the province at some point. TE 31.57, 60 to 64 Queen Street East and 31 to 131 Church Street, zoning amendment application preliminary report, Ward 27. I would ask that the staff put the motion on the screen. This is our standard motion of expanded notification, and also to provide accommodations for those who require it, including childcare, accessible resources, and language interpretation. All those yeah, may not be too much fun for the child. All those in favor of the motion on the screen, item as amended. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.58, 175 Elizabeth Street, official planning and zoning bylaw amendment, applications, preliminary report, Ward 27. Again, I would move the motion on the screen. Once again, expanded notification and accommodations for those who need it. All those in favor of the motion on the screen? Any opposed? Item as amended? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.59, 2494 Danforth Avenue, official plan amendment and zoning amendment application, preliminary report, Ward 31. I believe this will be held by Councillor Fletcher.
I have the motion here for approval. Councillor Davis has to move.
All those in favor of the motion on the screen? Any opposed? Item as amended? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.60, construction staging area time extension, Phase 1, Adelaide Street West, 19 Duncan Street, Ward 20.
I'm going to ask to hold that down for a moment, if that's all right.
Okay.
And I'm also going to ask to hold down 61 and 62 afterwards.
Okay, so, great, thank you, Councillor. So, item 60 is held for Councillor Cressy. Then I'm just going to read the title out loud for the record. TE 31.61, construction staging area, Bremner Boulevard, 16 York Street. Councillor Cressy is requesting to hold. That will be held in his name. TE 31.62, construction staging area, time extension, Phase 1, 19 Duncan Street. Again, Councillor Cressy is requested to hold. I mentioned that already. So that's held. TE 31.63, installation of on-street accessible parking spaces, February, March 2018, non-delegated, Ward 18. Councillor Bailao?
Approve staff recommendations.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries, thank you. And TE 31.64, construction staging area, Dalhousie Street, 60 Shooter Street, and 187 to 189 Church Street, Ward 27. I would request that the clerk put the motion onto the screen. Should I go through it? You think you folks are familiar with this one? It's the usual, clean the street, make sure that you don't impede pedestrian safety, you do everything you can to consult and communicate with the local community. You install appropriate signage, including converging mirrors to ensure that pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists are safe. And you direct them to establish a construction management working group and to invite local stakeholders, transportation services, MLS standards, Toronto Buildings and Adjacent Neighbors Local Residents Association, and you maintain a website to provide clear communication at all times. I won't repeat the next one, but that is the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? Item is amended. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.65, construction staging area, Walton Street, 700 Bay Street, Ward 27. Again, I would ask the clerk to put the motion on the screen. I won't repeat myself. The motion is before you. All those in favor? Any opposed? Item is carried. Okay, item as amended, carried. Thank you. TE 31.66, construction staging area, 81 Dundas Street East, Ward 27. I reluctantly move the motion on the screen. And I say reluctant because this was another OMB approval, so it's such a slap in the face that we have to now give them permission to close the street after the OMB ruled against the local community. But nevertheless, here we are. All those in favor of the motion on the screen?
But you're not bitter.
I am very bitter, actually.
You're very bitter.
All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Item as amended? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. TE 31.67, construction staging area time extension, 112 Parliament Street, Ward 28.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move to approve staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.68, installation removal of on-street accessible parking spaces, February-March 2018, delegated Ward 18.
Approve staff recommendations.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.69, removal of on-street accessible loading zone, Delaware Avenue, Ward 19.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to move staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.70, accessible loading zone, Bowmore Road, Ward 32.
Good morning, everyone. Well, we're all about Vision Zero versus Zero Vision, and we are putting in accessible loading zone outside a public school.
Okay. All those
I
in
move the
favor?
motion.
Any opposed? That carries. TE 31.71, accessible loading zone, Scarborough Road, Ward 32. Councillor McMahon.
And this is an accessible loading zone outside a Montessori school. So, move staff rec.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. TE 31.72, TD Toronto Jazz Festival in Bloor, Yorkville, Ward 27. I'd like to move the recommendations in the staff report and to congratulate staff for all their hard work. We're closing down Yorkville Avenue and Schollard Street from June the 25th to July the 2nd, and for the TD Jazz Festival. All are welcome. Yes, for one whole week, because that's the way we do things in Ward 27. We like to shut down roads. All those in favor of the Jazz Festival? Any opposed? No, we're okay with culture, though. Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you very much. TE 31.73, parking regulations, Simpson Avenue, Ward 30. Okay, motion is on the screen, councillors. All those in favor? Any opposed? Item as amended. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.74, student pickup drop-off area, Edwin Avenue, Ward 18.
Approve staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. T 31.75, lane designation Front Street West at University Avenue, York Street, Ward 20.
I'm going to move staff recommendations. Thanks.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. T 31.76, parking amendments, Walmer Road, Castleview Avenue, and Russell Hill Drive, Ward 21.
Staff have an amendment. I'm not sure if it's ready. No, it's not. Okay, I'll hold it.
Okay. And we'll hold that for Councillor Mihevc. TE 31.77, parking amendments, Pears Avenue, Ward 27. Just double check. Okay, I'd like to move the recommendations in the staff report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.78, parking amendments, Spruce Street, Ward 28.
Thanks, Madam Chair. With moral support from some residents on Spruce Street, I'd like to move approval of staff recommendations.
Well done, Councillor. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.79, parking amendments, Bain Avenue, Ward 30.
Sorry, I have a motion there.
Okay. Motion is on the screen.
This is the school zone reconfigured to make it safer for kids. Part of our Vision Zero.
Okay, another Vision Zero motion. All those in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Item as amended. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.80, parking amendments, Wagstaff Drive, Ward 30. Okay. TE 31.81, parking amendments, Barrington Avenue, Ward 31. Okay, and we're holding this? Nope, okay. Just to clarify, is that motion missing some words at the beginning, or?
Sorry, it should be capital T.
Okay. Okay, that's fine. All those in favor?
I want new clerks. I want new clerks.
No, no. Absolutely not.
It's hard to
Everyone stay in your chairs, please. All those in favor, please? Any
The
opposed?
Queen is offended.
Item as amended? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.82, parking amendments, Main Street, Ward 31. Okay, motion is on the screen. Any opposed? That carries. TE 31.83, traffic and parking amendments, Hayden Street, Ward 27. Thank you. I will move the recommendations in the staff report. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.84, heavy truck prohibition, public lane adjacent to number 2 Braymore Gardens, Ward 21.
Approval of the staff recommendations.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. TE 31.86, always stop control, Ardmore. Okay, sorry, I jumped ahead. TE 31.85, traffic control signals, Broadview Avenue, Ward 29.
Yes, I'm going to be moving a deferral for a month, and then I will do.
Okay, motion to defer for 1 month. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. T 31.86, always stop control, Ardmore Road and Rosemary Road, Ward 21. Ward 21. Councillor Mihevc.
Yes, sorry, my apologies. Approve the staff recommendations.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. T 31.87, traffic calming speed humps, Milverton Boulevard, Ward 29.
I'm going to be moving the alternate recommendations for polling.
Okay. Alternative recommendations on the screen, folks. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.88, speed hump poll results, Bain Avenue, Ward 30.
I'd like to move approval, please.
All those in favor?
Another school hump.
Under Vision Zero motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. TE 31.89, these are deferred items from previous meetings. Proposed installation of speed bumps, Wagstaff Drive, Ward 30.
Holding it right now.
Sorry, Counselor?
Holding.
Hold, sorry, okay. Thank you. T 31.90, traffic calming speed humps, Gulf View Avenue, Ward 32.
Thank you very much. And I move the alternate recommendations.
Okay. And they will be on the screen shortly. There they are. All those in favor of the alternate recommendations? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. T 31.91, traffic calming speed humps, East Lynn Avenue, Ward 32.
Ditto to, I'm moving the alternate recommendations.
Motion's on the screen. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. T 31.92, protecting trees in Toronto and East York, Ward 30.
Oh, you know what? I just realized there are deputants for 90. I have deputants, sorry.
Maybe they'll be happy.
I know.
Leave it until they come.
We have to reopen.
Yeah. Or should we leave it and then if they want, they're,
Are they on the list, Mary Margaret? Are they on here?
Yeah, they are.
no, I'm not sure if they're here. See them.
Sorry, Councillor McMahon, you're right, and I should have checked the green sheets.
So
that-
she should,
So
we'll
we're-
have to hold it down, and then she'll have to reopen and then hold it
Do
down.
you want to call them?
So we're going to hold that item down for the,
I know, that's what I said.
yeah. So if I can get a motion to reopen that item, Councillor McMahon, all those in favor? Item is
Sorry about that.
And we're going to hold that for deputants, and we'll come back to it. Okay? And so now we're on T 31.92, protecting trees in Toronto and East York, Ward 30.
Actually, yeah, it's not really Ward 30, it's came
It's
out of,
everybody.
Our Parks and Environment, looking at the number of times that the Committee of Adjustment went ahead or didn't. So apparently, this was the place I had to move this, so I'm moving that here for a report.
Okay, so you're moving the recommendations in your letter.
Yeah. At Parks and Environment, we had the tree report and what, around the Committee of Adjustment, and I tried to move these there, but I wasn't allowed. I have to move them here because they have to do with planning issues. So I'm moving this report here to look at. You can see the number of times that the committee upheld or turned down based on knowledge about trees. That's all.
Okay. Are there,
Pardon me?
so before we have a conversation, so the councillor has tabled her motion. If you have questions, then raise your hand. If you're not, we're ready to vote.
We're good?
Okay, all those in favor? No questions, correct? All those in favor of the recommendations in the
The
councillor's
report
letter?
request.
Yeah. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. T 31.93, endorsement of events for liquor license purposes. I'm going to hold this in case there's some last-minute additions. We'll get back to that. And that brings us to T 31.94, appointment of public members to the McCormick.
We have to add 94 to 106 first.
Oh, sorry, okay. Can I get a motion to add items 94 to 106? Councillor Perks, all those in favor? That carries. So now we move on to T 31.94, appointment of public members to the McCormick Playground Arena Board, Ward 18.
Approve recommendations?
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carry. T 31.95, residential demolition application 422 and 424
I'm going to hold that
Roncesvalles
for a minute.
Avenue. Yes, Councillor.
This is not,
Okay, I know, it's across the street, I recognize the address. TE 31.96, parking amendments on Sheridan Avenue between Dundas Street West and College Street, Ward 18.
Approve recommendations?
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. T 31.97, 1540 DuPont Street, proactive enforcement measures, Ward 18.
Approve recommendations?
All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. TE 3199, always, oh, sorry, TE 31.98, 540 to 544 King Street West Community Consultation Meeting, Ward 20.
I'm going to move the recommendations. Thank you.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. T 31.99, always stop control and road modifications, Fort York Boulevard and Queens Wharf Road, Ward 20.
Again, I'm going to move the recommendations in my letter.
Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. T 31.100, reopening of TE 62, Leslie Street Traffic Calming, Ward 30.
Yeah, first motion to reopen.
Okay, motion to reopen. All those in favor, reopening. Any opposed? That carries. And then Councillor? Okay. And then a motion to approve. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.101, Black Lab Brewery sales by the glass permit application to the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, Ward 32.
Thank you very much. So I move this as, and welcome our third brewery to wonderful Ward 32. Sure.
Yeah, there's a,
Need a site visit.
I think Councillor Fragedakis wants to move an
Sampling?
amendment. Okay.
A little
All those-
early for sampling, but
All those in favor of the microbrewery?
Yep.
Any opposed? That carries. TE 31.102, Always Stop Control Gulfview Avenue and Duvernette Avenue.
right. And I have, as you can see in my letter, just more of Vision Zero. Sorry.
Did you want to withdraw?
103, I'd like to withdraw.
103?
Yeah, 102, I'm moving. Thank you.
Yes,
That will work.
thank you, councillors. So recommendations moved from the content of the letter. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.103, request to reopen. TE 28.23, request for offense exemption to the Toronto Municipal Code, Chapter 447, 245 Eastwood Road, 32.
Yeah, and I'd like to withdraw this.
Okay,
We're not ready for this yet.
motion to withdraw. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. T 31.104, parking amendments, Natalie Place, Ward 30.
Approve the 1 hour parking, please.
Okay. All those in favor? No, it's to move the recommendations in the letter. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so we can now proceed to the top of the agenda.
105 and,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, before we head to the beginning of the top of the agenda, I just want to bring councillors' attention to a new item that's been added, TE 31.105, planning streets, movement, and placemaking around the new Mirvish Village, Ward 20.
Ward 19 and 20, and I'm happy to introduce it.
Okay, oh, yes,
Do I have to move to introduce it, or has it
It's already been introduced.
Then I'll
Oh,
move the
okay.
recommendations in the letter.
okay.
Thanks, Joe.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. We will come back to TE 31.105, but before we do that, I have a very, before 106, thank you. It's with a bit of a heavy heart and a lot of regret that I have to acknowledge that our downtown manager of planning, David Okawa, is retiring. And I think many of us would share in the sentiments that David has been incredible to work with. This will be his very last meeting with us. For the members of the public who are aware of David's skills, you will know that I'm sure I can convey that you share your sense of loss. David has spent 38 years as a planner with the City of Toronto, and all for the exception of 3 in the public sector. So he's our guy. And he worked in the former borough of East York, the Etobicoke York Planning Office, the manager of Midtown in Toronto East York, and is now the downtown manager of Toronto East York. He promises not to come back as a consultant and a lobbyist, and I checked with him multiple times on that. And he says that he will continue to keep an eye on us at every single public meeting, so we have to be on our best behavior. And I can say that as someone who's worked with David from the beginning of my term when he was a manager of Midtown, and then when he moved downtown, because Ward 27 gets to have both pieces, he has just been exceptional to work with, and I know that my staff and I will greatly miss him and his thoughtful leadership through the planning process, through tough conversations where he never, ever gives up on what he believes is right in the pursuit of the public commons and the public interest. And I know that others will miss him as well. And he's got a dedicated team of planners that have worked under David's steady leadership, and we thank you, David, for all that you've done for us. Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
No, just thank you very much, Councillor, and members of the Community Council. I certainly enjoy my time here and appreciate all wonderful things that this Community Council has done for the residents of the city.
Okay. Thank you, David. Okay. Tile the doors, don't let him out. So thank you.
Still got items here.
Yeah, that's right. So he's not leaving us yet. So we can drag this meeting out for as long as we want. But for those members of the public who are here to depute on any particular items on the agenda, please make sure that you've registered your name with the clerk so that we know that you're here to speak and we can acknowledge you when your item comes up. The first item, which is time for 9:30, we're 45 minutes behind, but not too bad, is TE 31.1, naming of public lanes bounded by the Canadian Pacific Railway, Bathurst Street, Bloor Street West, and Christie Street, Seton Village, Ward 20. If there's no members of the public, I'd like to acknowledge Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, and I'm going to be moving the staff recommendations. And just if I could indulge the audience for 30 seconds, there are 25 lanes that are being named as part of this today. And that's because over 2.5 years, the Seton Village Residents Association with the subcommittee has gone through an extensive process of research, contacting families, and coming up with a democratic model for coming up with laneways. And I just want to thank them for all their hard work and to move staff recommendations for the laneway naming.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. Some of these names are hard to say, but we will learn to pronounce them. All those in favor, oh, sorry, Councillor Bailao?
Sorry, I had questions of staff.
Oh, sorry. Then before we move on to the vote, if I can indulge, Councillor Bailao, questions of staff.
Thank you. So after we approve the naming of the laneways, can you run me through the process and how long it takes to get those lanes with the signs up? It's gonna take
Well, once the bylaw is passed, an email is sent to Transportation Services, the sign people, and they usually allow 8 to 10 weeks for the preparation of the sign.
Really? So we should expect the signs up between 8 and 10 weeks?
Yes.
So anything after that, there's a huge delay going on?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to know.
Any other questions? No? Okay.
Somebody's in trouble.
That sounds wonderfully quick. All those in favor of the motion in the staff report? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. And so, TE 31.2, naming of 3 lanes in Ward 21. And are there members of the public here to speak to this matter? Okay, seeing none. Councillor Mihevc.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd ask for committee support in approving 3 names. We go through an exhaustive community-led process for the choosing of names. Where an adjudication committee of residents is chosen. People make nominations to that adjudication committee, and this is the fruit of their work. Sorry, can Could I just ask for sound?
Yes, can I ask folks in the room to just bring your voices down to a quiet chatter so we can hear those who are speaking?
Yes, so the three that are being put forward today, one is Charlie Roach Lane. Charlie Roach honors a Canadian civil rights lawyer and activist in the Black community in Toronto. He was a wonderful person, born in Trinidad, participated in all kinds of civil rights issues and debates in the city of Toronto, was very influential in the start of Caribana, now known as the Caribbean Carnival, and this one is richly deserved for him. The second one is Don Franks Lane. People might remember him as a Canadian actor, vocalist, and jazz musician. He was very active on Aboriginal issues as well. And the third one is Nick Vitantonio Laneway in the village, Fort Hill Village. His family has had the oldest business in the village, operating continuously since 1931. Wow. That's a lot of hair. And the barber, yes, Nick the barber. Nick, he probably cut your hair. You're probably conflicted on this one. No, just kidding. So he also, not only did he cut the hair of, or the family anyway, cut the hair of many a person in the Forest Hill Village. They also had a charity golf tournament that they ran for many years and raised all kinds of money in the hundreds of thousands of dollars for the hospital for sick children. So these three went through a very good process, richly deserved, and I'd ask for your support in there. And then we look for the 8 to 10 week process to get those signs built and installed. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay, T31.3, permanent closure of the portion of the public lane at the rear of 2112 to 2114 Yonge Street. Any members of the public here to speak to this matter? Seeing none. Ward 22. Councillor Mihevik.
Wrong one.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
The other one.
I was just thinking haircuts and go ahead.
Mihevik.
Throughout my childhood, Nick cut my hair. I love Nick. I'm so happy about that. I move the staff recommendations.
Okay. All those in favor? Staff recs. Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. T31.4. 1209, 1232, 1234, 1238, 1246, 1250, and 1264 College Street zoning amendment final report. Any members of the public here to speak to this matter? Seeing none. Ward 18.
Move staff recommendations.
Councillor Clerk is coming to speak to you. We're just going to hold this item down before we vote on it. And while that happens, can I proceed to item 5? Yeah, okay. TE 31.5 to... Okay.
Oh my God, thank you so much.
Actually, so before we move to number 5, we'll stay on number 4. Councillor, what would you like to...
It's fine. We actually have a motion to defer this item for one cycle.
Okay.
I thought we were on the following item.
Councillor is moving the motion to adjourn the item to May 2nd, 2018 meeting of Community Council.
Thank you.
All those in favor of the 1-month deferral? Any opposed? Carried. TE 31.5, 220 and 234 Simcoe Street and 121 St. Patrick Street zoning bylaw amendment application. Final report. There are speakers to this matter. I would like to call Derek Lung, followed by Sita Ramkalawansing, Sharon Avery from the Toronto Foundation, Max Allen, Grange Community Association, David Pontarini, and Kim Kovar. Derek Lung, are you here? Welcome. You will have 5 minutes. The clock is on your left-hand side, and I'll start it when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Derek Lung, resident and unit owner at 426 University Avenue, which is the RCMI building with 318 residential units. The RCMI building is directly east of the proposed development. I have 3 points to present to you today, 3 Ps: petition, protection, and phony data. First point, petition. I'm officially presenting to you the petition to reject the zoning bylaw amendment. I gathered 200 signatures, 209 to be exact, so I'm speaking for 209 voices today. This is in your package. Second point, protection. The staff report failed to sufficiently address key elements within the downtown tall buildings guideline and tall buildings design guideline adopted by Toronto City Council May of 2013. The purpose of these guidelines is to protect the people living and working downtown with a unified set of performance measures. By allowing this proposed development to circumvent the obligations of the guidelines with less than minimum standards, undermine the guidelines itself and would fail to protect the residents in the surrounding neighborhood. For example, the proposal violates page 6 of the downtown tall building guideline with respect to height. Proposed building number 1 is on a secondary high street, so the height should be 1/3 lower than the high street it runs parallel to. 1/3 lower translates to 30 to 37 stories, not 39 stories. So the proposal's building number 1 is at least 2 stories too high. This excessive height diminishes and blocks the sky views and casts excessive shadowing. Another example, the proposal violates page 52 of the tall buildings design guidelines with respect to separation distances, that building separation be a minimum of 25 meters. The separation distance between the proposed site and the RCMI building is 21.3 meters, which is 4 meters below the minimum. This creates a loss of privacy for the occupants. Third and last point, phony data. There is questionable and dishonest behavior by the developer. In the architectural drawings, there is misinformation and inaccuracies. So the drawing of the height of the proposed building number 1, which is on the left, versus the RCMI building on the right, is misleading. A misleading image that building number 1 on the left looks 10 stories shorter than the RCMI building on the right, when the gap is technically only 1.8 meters. And second image here is a misstatement of fact that the RCMI building is 147 meters high when it is really 135 meters high, a 12-meter overstatement. How can you trust the developer and the proposal with 2 clear technical inaccuracies found? What else is false and untrue with the submission by the developers that the staff report used to form its recommendation? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your submission. Are there any questions of the speaker? Okay, seeing none, thank you. I would like to call Sita Ramkalawansing.
With your permission, Max is going to join me. We're both with the Grange Community Association.
Okay.
Hello, everybody. It's nice to appear before a committee, a council that is just about gender balanced in its composition. Wasn't true when I was here, but anyway. Max is a vice president of the Grange Community Association, and I'm the honorary chair of the Grange Community Association. And in the interest of full disclosure, I'm also a board member of the Toronto Foundation, and I used to work in this building. The proposal before you, while it's not typically of a height that I don't like in our neighborhood, has a number of community benefits, and we've been involved in extensive discussions and participation throughout the course of this application. There is a letter from our president, which is item 31.52, in which we identify the issues, some of the issues that are of concern to the association. And Councillor Cressy has kindly agreed to move resolutions regarding these. They have to do in part with consultation with the public art design, consultation process with respect to the allocation of the proposed community convening space, which will be managed by the Toronto Foundation, participation in the site plan review process, among other things. One of the reasons that we've requested to be involved with developing a process for the allocation of that convening space, which will be of great benefit to organizations right across the city, is that I know how the city's pre-approved group list works, and it could include everybody. I don't even know how many people are on that list. So the purpose of this is to actually make it possible for groups who are working on issues related to sustainability and environmental activities and community civic engagement are actually able to do their work. So thank you, Councillor Cressy, for taking note of that recommendation. There are many issues which are raised by the prior deputant, which are of course concerned, but we feel that they've been more or less addressed, and the particular building that was referenced has had itself exempt from many, many, many provisions of the official plan. Having lived in that neighborhood since 1971, I'm fully aware of some of those things. There's always a trade-off, and we believe that having a POPs and a public park on the site is also really important, and we're glad to see those. So Max will also speak.
Hello. Working with Lanterra and the city on this project has been a delight. Now, when was the last time you heard somebody say that? No, I don't. No, this is different. I think that when this is built, everybody will be pleased. The addition of the park owned by the city down to the center of the earth will be a jewel in the neighborhood. We are going to work on the public art component, and I expect we'll come up with something unusual and satisfactory here. One trouble that this development proposal raises is the intersection of St. Patrick's Street and Dundas, which is a terrible intersection now. It will get worse with more traffic both from the south and from the north, and something creative, inventive, and probably unprecedented has to be done at that corner, and I think it will be. In general, this is a great project, and I think everybody will like it when it's done. Getting it done, as usual, will be difficult, but the end result, I think, will please you.
And we're both under 5 minutes.
And we're done.
Yes, you both spoke incredibly well, and you have a lot of time to spare. I will ask councillors if there are any questions for the speakers. Okay, seeing none, thank you. I would like to call Sharon Avery. Hi, Sharon, welcome. You will have 5 minutes. The clock is on your left-hand side. Nice to see you. When you're ready.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Thank you, Councillor Cressy, for endorsing Toronto Foundation to be part of this opportunity. I really just wanted to take just a couple of minutes to express our gratitude to be part of the potential that is this build. I would concur with our previous debutantes in terms of the experience we've had working both with the city and with Lanterra. Toronto Foundation has been around for nearly 40 years. You may not know a great deal of the history of the community foundations in this country, but they exist in every community, and they exist to serve those communities in perpetuity. And in that way, Toronto Foundation is actually one of the young ones. I like to think of us as a teenager in the community foundation movement. The oldest in Canada is in Winnipeg. It will turn 100 in a couple of years. And the biggest is in Vancouver, which has over $1.2 billion in assets. So Toronto Foundation, I've been there for 18 months now, aspires to greatness and aspires to doing big things for the City of Toronto. The one project that you may be very familiar with, I hope you're familiar with, is our vital signs report. In fact, I brought my dog-eared copy with me today. I hope you all have received your copies. And this is a report the Toronto Foundation has been doing for 16 years, and it measures quality of life in this city. This year, for the first time, we added an equity lens because we wanted to look at the increasing challenges many in our population find themselves living different lives. Our top 1% who make about $250,000 or more a year are in real contrast in their lives to the bottom 35% of our city that are living off $20,000 a year. And I know all of you deal with some of those issues on a regular basis, and it's our commitment as a community foundation to bring those issues to life, to provide the data necessary to argue on behalf of those folks, and to support the organizations that are doing the heavy lifting on the intractable issues in this city. A data point you won't find in vital signs, but I wanted to share with you today, is that 60% of all donations in the city, in this country and this city, flow to only 1% of the organizations that exist to serve. And that is something we'd like to disrupt. And having the opportunity to raise the voices and convene the small and mighty organizations that are doing the hard work on the intractable issues is a piece of work we will be able to extend greatly with this opportunity to move into this space and have 1,000 square feet of convening space. These organizations live and work out of kitchen tables and basements and back offices. And to be able to provide professional space where they can meet with their constituents, with their key stakeholders, and develop their plans and engage in their city would be very meaningful. And so I really just wanted to take the opportunity today to reinforce that the Section 37 money you would be spending not just on us. I was delighted to note Councillor Cressy's commitment as well to the affordable housing piece of this, but also to our convening space. I wanted to say thank you and express that we believe this will be transformational for the Toronto Foundation and thus for the city.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, with our thanks. I'd like to call David Pontarini and Kim Kovar. Yes, and before you folks speak, I'd like to yield the floor to Councillor Fragedakis, who has an announcement to make.
Yes, we'll be brief. We'll let the deputant speak shortly. I just wanted to acknowledge that we're joined today by 30 students from the grade 5 class at Diefenbaker Elementary School who've come to see democracy in action. And thanks so much, colleagues, for allowing me this moment to interrupt the proceedings to showcase these kids and let them see a little bit of this hearing that's taking place right now.
Welcome, grade 5 class. And then coming back to our speakers, you're going to have to top that. You have 5 minutes each when you're ready.
Upstaged.
Yeah.
Good morning, members of council. I'm here to briefly walk you through the design that we have been working very closely with staff and the community and the councillor on. I've got two sets of images. One is a site plan that shows essentially the site in its consolidated format where the green P parking and the existing bank computer building will be replaced by 3 new buildings. The 3 buildings are located in fronting along St. Patrick and also along Simcoe Street. And then in the southwest quadrant, we have an on-site park dedication of approximately 1,000 square meters or 10,000 square feet that you can see in the lower right-hand corner of the image, and left-hand corner of the image, and it is the green block that's shown there. The towers range in height from 39 to 35 to 17 stories. We've worked very carefully with staff to ensure that there is no impact or minimum impact on the surrounding context, and most of, and if not all of the city's tall building guidelines have been met on this site. We have been working with staff to mitigate anything that doesn't meet the guidelines to make sure that we are improving the conditions on the site. The next image is the rendering that shows you the character or the architectural quality that we're trying to achieve here, one that tries to pick up on the artistic character of the community and the connection with OCAD and also with the AGO. So we've spent a great deal of time, again, working with staff in the community to make sure that this is a very high-quality mixed-use project with a combination of retail at the base that heavily animates a mid-block connection. And also we're providing a component, a large component of office to replace the office that's being displaced. And then we have residential uses, again, that are consistent with the intention of the official plan in this area in the 3 towers that we're providing.
And I'd just like to close with 3 points, I guess. The first would be to thank city staff for their effort. It's been, as Max and Sita indicated, it's been a really positive process we've been through. It's been a long process, but it's been a good one, and I wanted to thank staff and Ms. McAlpine in particular for all her efforts over the last 2.5 to 3 years. We're very proud of the project that David has just described. In addition to the building itself, there's an extensive Section 37 contribution coming to the city and to this neighborhood. You heard about the Toronto Foundation space going in the building. David referred to the office replacement space and the park. There's also a POPs, extensive public arc. We are providing a TPA parking garage within the building and additional funding for other benefits in the area, including affordable housing and further nonprofit office space. I did want to touch finally on the comment from the first gentleman who spoke about the phony data and the dishonest behavior of my client. I think the gentleman has perhaps misunderstood the drawings. The sketch that he put up on the board, he has incorrectly labeled all of the building heights, not only the proposed heights, but the RCMI building height. He may or may not be aware that there is a mechanical penthouse which forms part of that building, which is 12.5 meters high. The height of that building is, in fact, significantly taller than the proposal here. There is nothing inaccurate or dishonest about the materials prepared by Mr. Poncherini, and the gentleman simply has his facts wrong. And in terms of the tall building setback requirements, he's also suggesting the proposal contravenes in relation to the RCMI building, and it does not. The building was designed specifically with the RCMI building in mind, and the 12.5 meter setback is met opposite that building. So again, I want to thank staff. I understand the councillor has a motion to provide for some further community consultation as we move forward through the site plan approval process. My client's worked very well with the neighbors and is quite happy to continue to do so as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions of the speakers? Seeing none, thank you. Our next speaker is Bashir Kassir. Welcome. Clock is on your left, and I'll start it. You've got 5 minutes when you're ready.
Sure, thank you. Good morning, Council. I lived on St. Patrick's Street for the last 16 years, and the current proposal will host 3 times the number of current residents on the street. While erecting the 3 towers could be done in a way or another by an amendment, moving people in and out of the neighborhood would not be resolved by a similar approach. Those of us who live on St. Patrick's Street know exactly well that the street is being jammed almost on a daily basis between Dundas and Queen because of one McDonald's eatery. They have delivery trailer almost on a daily basis. Imagine now having more commercial entities that will require more delivery trucks on a daily basis. I would like also to request that the developer provide a real-time simulation of the traffic during rush time hours, showing the flow of both commercial and residential activities. This is now a developer challenge. Once these towers are being erected, the challenge will be on this firm to resolve. Finally, I would like to touch on social housing, and while I sit on the board of a nearby agency, I would like to ask the developer if they are willing to provide units to home the homelessness in the neighborhood and contribute toward the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none. Are there any other members of the public here to speak to this matter? I don't recognize any hands going up, so we'll just bring this into Community Council. Members, are there any questions of staff? Councillor Cressy.
Thank you. And so I'll direct my questions to Linda McDonald and Sue McAlpine in planning. Over the last 3.5 years, there's been a number of discussions and revisions related to heights. Could you go through the changes in heights of the peak building? And there's some suggestion or questions related to the tall building guidelines, and I'd like to understand whether this conforms or not with the tall building guidelines from a high to a secondary high street.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'll answer your first question, Councillor, and then I'll pass it over to my colleague, Sue. In terms of the tall building guidelines, it certainly does meet that criteria in the sense that the tall building guidelines talk about secondary streets being 1/3 lower than main streets. And in this case, we do have an approved building which is under construction right now, which is 207 meters at the corner of Dundas and University. So in order to meet that criteria, the building would have to be lower than 136 meters. And indeed, it actually is. The proposed building is 127 meters, so it actually does meet that criteria if you look at it in terms of metric height, and that is what staff look at.
Okay, so you're referring to, because the building you're referring to at the corner of Dundas and University is 55 stories, but there's a significant office component, which is why you're looking at the meters, not the stories. And
That's correct, Councillor. I'm referring to 488 University, which is right at the corner, and the overall height in meters is 207 meters.
Okay, but now, the original heights proposed, did the original heights proposed meet the tall building guidelines in that transition, or through changes have they been able to now meet it?
That's correct, Councillor. Through you, Madam Chair, through the changes. So the original proposal was actually 54 stories in height. So it has been reduced. The taller building has been reduced significantly to 39 stories.
Okay. There's been some conversation of separation distances, and I know it's a big topic in the conversation of livability at the moment downtown with vertical living. Can staff go through the separation distances and whether this building meets the separation distances around its 3 buildings?
Certainly, and through the chair, the building certainly does meet its obligations on its site in terms of meeting 25 meters between towers or 12.5 meters to a lot line. And that's also key in terms of the guidelines, is meeting not only the separation distance between towers, but also to a lot line. In this case, the building is set back 12.5 meters to the north. And this is actually important because it creates an offset between this building and 426 University, the RCMI building. And also the building is 12.15 meters away from the center line of Simcoe Street. So with those two things in mind, led staff to actually recommend this proposal.
Okay, but on the separation distances, because I've heard from a number of constituents and residents of 426 University, the RCMI building, including here today. So I understand that this building is meeting its 12.5 meter separation distance, but is it under 25 meters between this proposed building and 426 University?
Correct, Councillor. It is under 25 meters between this and 426 University, but in this case, staff also looked at the fact that it is offset from 426 University. But and in terms of meeting its 12.5 meters, it is very close. It is 12.15 meters.
But I just want to understand, this takes us back to a planning decision that was made in the last term of council, and if I could go to Linda McDonald on this, does 426 University meet its required 12.5 meters?
No, it does not.
And was that a planning supported development?
No, planning did not support 426 University.
So how was 426 University supported? How was it endorsed by council if planning didn't support it?
Council exercised its prerogative to not always take staff's advice, so it was approved by City Council.
So in the last term of council, a decision was made against planning advice to allow the building at 426 University to be less than 12.5 meters. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So had council followed staff's advice on 12.5 meters, would it be 25 meters in total between these two buildings?
Yes, that would have been the result.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any other questions of staff? Okay. Seeing none, members to speak. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you. And I have a motion which I'll begin by moving. And the motion speaks on 4 items specifically. The first is as it relates to the public art, which is being done in consultation with OCAD University, as well as with consultation with the local community and myself. The second is as it relates to community space, which I'll go into more detail on, related to the convening space and establishing a process for allocating that space. The third is to ensure that the local community is involved in the site plan process. And the fourth, and this relates specifically to the final deputant, relates to, and comments from Max Allen, the transportation challenges which exist today and will continue to exist unless we get our head around it through a more robust and detailed transportation study, as well as the installation of a traffic light towards that. With that, I'll say a few words. First of all, I just want to begin by thanking our City of Toronto staff and across departments, planning, urban design, PF&R, the Toronto Parking Authority, and real estate. This has been a long process, and our staff have been at the front of it. The many residents who've been engaged over 3.5 years on this project, both the Grange Community Association, adjacent TCHC buildings, condo boards like 426 University. Their involvement is made for a much, much better project. And it's because of their concerns and suggestions that we've been able to do that. And finally, to Lantera. Not all projects go 3.5 years before coming here, and those that go 3.5 years usually go through a board process in the past, though hopefully not in the future with changes. That wasn't the case here. There were 3 public meetings, there were walkabouts, there were 2 visits to the design review panel. I'm pretty sure that some members of the committee lost their hair a la Councillor Layton through this process. Sorry, Mike. Sorry. And Councillor Mahevic. All that is to say that it's a long process, and many show similar scars to Councillor Mahevic and Layton. And I just want to, and I'll come back to this, what's important about this, and Speaker, I noticed that, Chair, I noticed that my time isn't on, but I'll try to be judicious.
I'm keeping time in my head. Go ahead. Contain your remarks. Do not talk about anybody's hair.
Fair enough. This involves city-owned land. And because it involves city-owned land, it is absolutely critical that as a city, that we ensure that we are not dealing with city-owned land and potential land deals from a single department's point of view. It cannot be done in silos. We need to do this all together. And I want to come back to that. Fundamentally, this project, there are 4 principles that I think are being met that I have used in evaluating this project. The first is, and it has to always be the case, is good planning, that the heights and the shadows meet our guidelines. And that's critical, that this has moved from 54 to 39 stories and through the urban design to mitigate shadows in the neighborhoods. Heights and shadows meet it, and separation distances, which we as council, through an OPA increase to 12.5 meters for a combined 25 meters, that was done on this site, and that's important. It's livable. So it's not just that it meets good planning, it is that it's livable. There is a 1,000 square meter park that is going to be on site in an area of parkland deficiency. There's 500 square meters of privately owned public space and improvements to the public realm to make mid-block connections through this. And there's also 37% 2 and 3 bedrooms. So beyond being good planning principles, can you actually live there? Families, people of different ages, with green space and an effective public realm. Is it equitable? There is a commitment to affordable housing, as always is the case in Ward 20. And to the comment is there the option to look at whether that can be on-site or off-site? Absolutely. The commitment is there, and that is critical around equitable. But then also, this contributes to a dynamic downtown by contributing to culture and civic institutions and nonprofits in our city. The Toronto Foundation will be part of this development. The City of Toronto will own 6,000 square feet of space in this development, of which we are entering into a lease arrangement with the Toronto Foundation. It will include space, 5,000 square feet for the foundation, along with 1,000 square feet of space for community and convening space that the foundation is going to manage, which I think will help to ensure that the civic institutions remain, our nonprofits, our community groups are part of downtown, and the public art contribution will be done with OCAD. I'm going to close just with 2 lessons on this. The first is city land. When this started 3.5 years ago, if I can be totally honest, departments weren't talking to each other. The Toronto Parking Authority was talking to themselves. Over the course of 3.5 years, we all got in the room together, and we all said, from a city building objective, what needs to be done here, from parkland to parking to affordable housing to community space. And it works better when we deal with city real estate, when we don't do it on a single department by department basis. And the second, and I want to close on this, is a reminder to all of us to follow staff advice when it comes to good planning principles. Because the concerns that are raised, which are real by 426 University, that there's not 25 meters distance, there are not 25 meters distance. But the development here meets their obligations of 25 meters, of 12.5 meters. It's that in the last term of council, the decision was made against staff advice that the building at University didn't have to meet their separation distance. We should always follow those sound planning principles, lest the residents of 426 University have to deal with something like this again in another part of the city. And with that, I'm proud to endorse this project with the motion that I've moved, I think, to further improvement. And those are my comments, Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cressy. Are there any other remarks?
I have one question.
Sure. Question of the mover?
Was that City Council that changed that recommendation about the...
Yes.
The staff recommendation was to maintain that?
Yes.
The City Council changed that last term?
Yes.
So this is, yeah. Community Council changed it? Or City?
Who knows? We'll go back to staff.
Okay. Thank you. Just want to know.
Councillor
Dave?
Dave?
Decisions here?
It was led by the local councillor here at this community council, and City Council approved community council's recommendations.
So the question then is basically you're recommending to accept that because we're in a box.
Planning principles are being met on this site, in most cases an exceeding of what our planning principles are on this development site.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Davis, did you have questions? No? Okay. Anyone else? Okay. All those in favor of the motion before us? Any opposed? Item as amended? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. We are now heading into TE 31.6. 219-231 Dundas Street East zoning amendment application, final report. We have one speaker registered, Jessica Muskovitz. Welcome, Jessica.
Sorry, I'll let you get started.
Try that again. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of Community Council. My name is Jessica Smuskowitz, and I'm a lawyer with Adam Brown's office. I'm here on behalf of Menkes Developments, the applicant on this application, and I have our client's architect, Russell Fleischer, with me to answer any questions you might have on our proposal. We'll be very brief. We're here in full support of the staff recommendations. Our client's original application was submitted almost exactly 2 years ago today, and over the past 2 years, they've worked very cooperatively with city staff and Councillor Wong Tam's office, so we just wanted to say a big thank you to city staff, especially to Derek, who I see here today, and to Councillor Wong Tam's office. And again, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them for you.
Thank you very much, Jessica, for your remarks. And do we have anyone else speaking? Do you want to speak as well? No? Okay, that sums it up. Any questions of the speaker? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Are there any members of the public, any other members of the public here to speak to this matter? We're on item number 6. And seeing none, then I don't have necessarily any questions of staff. What I'd like to do is just move a quick amendment The amendment is on the screen, and it's to ask city staff to help us construct a working group, largely to manage construction and traffic management, deal with the landscape and any public realm plans, and to do all of this prior to approving the site plan control process, and also to exempt, to ensure that future occupants of this building are aware that they may not be able to get a on-street parking permit, which is, I think, pretty much a standard clause in most developer agreement of purchase and sales, but just to make it explicitly clear. And then to move the staff report as amended. I want to thank city staff for their work. I recognize this application when it first came into the local community. There was a number of concerns. I know that the applicant has worked very hard with city planning to resolve a number of those outstanding issues that are now resolved, which is why we have a positive staff report. We did put together and worked really hard on creating a new official plan amendment 82, which is not in full force and effect because that document, which is supposed to give us more planning control, has been appealed to the board. And because it's not in full force and effect, then we've done everything we can to make sure that any applications coming in are going to be responsive to the spirit of OPA 82. I also want to thank the applicant and recognize that we have 36% of 2 to 3 bedroom units in this building, and bring members to their attention, recognizing that 1/3 of the Section 37 has been allocated for affordable housing, simply because we are a city with a deep need of affordable housing. So that's all I have to say, and once again to thank staff for their ongoing hard work. Planning the downtown east is always very tricky, especially since our planning documents that we are trying to create and have them in full force effect keep being appealed to the board, even though the city has done its work. Are there any other members who would like to speak to this item? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion on the screen? Any opposed? Item as amended before you? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. TE 31.7, 88 Queen Street East, 10 Mutual Street, and parts of 30 to 50 Mutual Street, official planning and zoning amendment application, final report. Are there any members of the public here to speak to this matter? Okay, seeing none, I recognize Patrick Devine. Welcome, Patrick. You'll have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Chair and members of Community Council and solicitor for the applicant, we support the recommendations in the final report. There's some fine-tuning that was required because it's a phased project, and we've worked with staff, and I understand you have before you a motion that deals with those matters. So I'd ask that you adopt the recommendations as amended by the motion, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Are there any questions of the speaker? Okay, seeing none. And are there any other members of the public here to speak to this item? We're on item number 7. Okay, seeing none. Members with questions of staff? I don't see any hands going up. Then I would like to move the motions. There are 2 motions. One is a technical amendment from staff. You want to put that one on the screen first? And so what we're doing is replacing the recommendations in the staff report with the recommendations on the screen. And if you want to scroll down to the bottom, because I don't believe this has been advance circulated. And this is a technical amendment that was provided by staff. You can just keep going. It's a little bit long, so bear with us. Is that okay? So, and the last 2 recommendations come from my office, once again to ensure that we're able to. We have a request of staff to create a construction and traffic management working group to work on landscape and public realm plans, as well as working on building materials and lighting. So this is essentially. Working on the site plan prior to delegated approvals, and to make sure that there is clear language about the exclusion of permit parking. And I want to thank staff for their report. You'll recognize, members, that we don't have any members of the community out here speaking against this application or even the prior application. I know that staff work really hard with my office and with the local stakeholders, addressing any questions that they may have and concerns that they have prior to even coming to this particular forum for final remarks and final approval. And this particular site, just for members, it's a very important entire block in the downtown east neighborhood. You'll probably recognize it as a very large surface parking lot directly across from Henry's, the camera shop. And so it actually flanks 4 particular elevations in street, and this is now phase 2. And this was a very challenging approval, largely because there had been a number of attempts to develop this particular block over the years, and this is the one application that has been successful. And that's usually with a lot of hard work and perseverance. And I think I just want to thank the applicant as well as planning staff for all their hard work. So we're going to be watching this part of the city continue to evolve and change, which I believe for the better. It comes with significant improvements. I won't necessarily read them all, but there is a significant introduction of green space and POPs, and it really does connect this particular section of the city together in a big, comprehensive and visionary way. So another city building adventure moving forward. Thank you, staff, for all your hard work. I know that we get to say a few words at the end of these very long processes, and oftentimes years of negotiations, and that doesn't even represent the number of hours that you put in getting it right for us. So thank you. Motion before you on the screen to amend the report. Any opposed? Item as amended. Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. TE 31.8675 Commissioner Street, City-Initiated Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application Final Report, Ward 30. Are there any speakers here for this item? Okay. Seeing none, we'll bring this into Community Council. Did anybody want to speak up there? No? Okay. Bringing this into Community Council, any questions of staff?
I'm just going to hold this.
Okay, Councillor Fletcher would like to hold. Okay, we'll come.
I have a motion that I'm preparing. So.
Sure, we'll come back to that for you, Councillor. TE 31.9, 289 Avenue Road Site Plan Control Application Final Report. We do have a speaker registered, Todd Trudelli. Welcome, Todd. When you're ready, you'll have 5 minutes. The clock is on your left-hand side.
Good morning. I'm Todd Trudell with Goldberg Group, the planning consultant for the applicant in this matter. Very briefly, just would like to say that we've worked with staff to address all of the department comments through this site plan process. We've had the opportunity to review the report and the recommended conditions in the revised attachment 7. And we are in support of that, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. Those comments were very succinct. Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, thank you. And are there any other members of the public here to speak to this matter? We're on item number 9. I don't see any hands going up. Members, are there any questions of staff? Seeing none, members to speak. Councillor Mallow.
Simply to defer this item until Transportation Services has finalized a construction mitigation plan in consultation with the ward councillor and local community, and this will come back for our consideration once that consultation has been done.
Okay. All those in favor? Motion on the screen. Any opposed? Thank you very much. TE 31. 3.10, 445-451 Adelaide Street West zoning amendment application request for directions report. Are there any members of the public here to speak to this matter? I don't see anyone. Any members with questions of staff? Questions for staff? No. Councillors to speak. Councillor Cressy.
Thank you. I'm going to move staff recommendations to direct the city solicitor and staff to oppose this at the OMB.
Okay. Are any questions of the mover? No. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. T 31.11, 135 to 143 Portland Street zoning amendment application request for directions report. We do have speakers. Yep. Andrew Faranik-Sick. Following Andrew would be Christian Irie. Hi, Andrew.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of committee. My name is Andrew Franchik. I'm a planner with the firm of WND. We're the planners for ID developments. Recognizing you do have a report that recommends refusal of the application before you today, I'm here to advise you that we are, in fact, actively working with staff to resolve issues on the application. We have a meeting set up for this Thursday, in fact, with staff, various members, including Heritage, recognizing that one of the concerns, significant concern in the application was the preservation of the heritage properties at the base. That is something that we are taking into consideration to heart, and will be meeting with staff to that effect to come up with something that is supportable by staff and also hopefully the community and this council, of course. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer those questions at this time. Otherwise, I'd support the recommendation to continue supportive discussions with ADI developments.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Are any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, Christian Irie. Christian, welcome.
Thank you.
And, I will restart the clock for you. You've got 5 minutes when you're ready.
Sure. Thank you very much. I live in 533 Richmond Street West, which is just adjacent. And a member of our community is quite active with an association, the Portland Area Residents Association. And he's out of the country, and he had asked a member of our building if it's possible to read aloud his letter, which I believe is actually amended to the item. So I'll do that. So again, this is just me reading the letter from the Portland Area Residents Association. So I'll go fast because it's going to be a stretch for the 5 minutes. So, to whom it may concern, Portland Area Residents Association is an interested party to the zoning amendment application on 135-143 Portland Street property in Toronto. Unfortunately, we only just received your notice of community council meeting on this matter, and I am currently out of Toronto. I respectfully ask that this email be included in your agenda. We are aware that these developers wish to devastate this little neighborhood of historic two-story work row houses and heritage preservation buildings. We vehemently oppose the height and density of the developer's proposal and ask that City Council do the same. It was only months ago that this association, the developers, and City Council and OMB Appeal agreed to a much lower and much less dense building directly across the street from this 135 to 143 Portland Street address at 553 Richmond Street West. At this location on the southwest corner of Portland Street and Richmond Street West, the final agreement was for the following: a small 7-story building fronting on Portland, running only a short distance south on Portland Street into the green space, frontage on Portland Street from there to the first 2-story historic row house, a reduction in height and density from the proposed 15 stories overall, an increased setback from both Richmond Street West and Portland Street, reduction in mass overall, terracing down to a 7-story street wall building at Richmond Street West and Portland Street corner, and a series of height increases up and back to 15 stories against the existing 12-story building at 55 Richmond Street West. On the 135-143 Portland Street proposal, we will be asking for a similar structure, a maximum 7-story building fronting Portland Street to include the 141 to 143 Portland Street property, with green space running south from there to the south end of the 135 Portland Street property. This parkland space inside the sidewalk at 135 139 Portland Street property, running east to a maximum 7-story building setback at the east side of the entire 135 to 143 Portland Street property. Please note that the property directly south of this proposed development is a 4.5-story former factory building that is under heritage preservation. The only reason we would accept a 7-story building butting up to this property is that there would be a parking lot between this building proposed and this building, a beautiful historic building with green space easing into it. So thank you. That's Emerson Denny, President, Portland Area Residents Association. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the speaker? No, seeing none. Thank you, Christian. Are there any other members of the public here to speak to this matter? We're on item number 11. Seeing none, then we're going to bring this into Community Council. Councillor Cressy, do you have questions of staff to speak?
I'm going to move the staff recommendations, which is to direct the city solicitor and staff to oppose this at the OMB and to carry on discussions in the interim.
Okay. Thank you. All those, are there any questions of the mover? No? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. TE 31.12. 470 to 474 Wellington Street West zoning amendment application, request for directions report. Are there any members of the public here to speak to this matter? I see you. Welcome. And if you can just clearly state your name for the clerk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Kate Lyons, Lyons. I'm solicitor for the applicant, and I'm here only to answer any questions or respond to any comments from members of the public who may wish to speak.
Thank you very much, Kate, for your remarks. And are there any other members of the public here for this matter? No? Okay, then we'll just bring this. Are there any? Oh, sorry, Max, did you want to speak to this? Please. Okay, please. Then thank you, Kate. If you can vacate, I'll make sure that we can acknowledge Max.
I hadn't intended to, but there's a situation on Wellington that I think deserves general attention, and that is why all this development is happening. This is an example of the domino effect when an application is made in a particular locality, and the other property owners nearby look at the situation and are afraid that highest and best use is going to affect them too. We think that the 4 applications on Wellington in this block at the moment have all come about to a certain extent because of the Brad Lamb application further east. And when an application like that is in danger of being approved, in this case at the board, the nearby landowners think, I'm going to be bankrupted when they raise my municipal taxes to meet the highest and best use criterion. And it seems to me that this site, perhaps Ms. Lyons can talk to this, and of course this isn't the kind of thing you'd expect a developer to say out loud, but community people can say it out loud, and that is, watch out, as many of you are doing, for the highest and best use impact all along a block where a big development is scheduled. Okay?
Thank you very much, Max. Any questions of the speaker? No? Okay. No, sorry, unfortunately, Kate, that's, you don't get to respond. But I will.
Mr. Allen and I will work together to resolve this.
Okay, you
okay. You're welcome to always do that.
Long-time friends.
Okay. Any members with questions of staff? No? Members to speak? Councillor Cressy?
So I'll begin. I'm going to move staff recommendations, which are to direct staff to oppose this and attend the OMB. I would just make a quick comment building on that by Max Allen, which is there are 4 applications currently under appeal on one block on Wellington. And to the comment that a flawed tax system can sometimes spur applications, I would just make comments related to a restaurant which is a few doors away from this, which is Le Select Bistro, which in a recent provincially mandated MPAC reassessment, a 2-story restaurant has been taxed on the basis of being an 11-story condo. And so if we think that Mac's comments aren't real, they are. in that this can force people out, and it's not the sequencing of applications, because I don't want to speak to any individual one, but rather the flawed provincial model within highest and best use coupled with a high-growth downtown area. But I will be moving the staff recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. All those in favor of the staff recommendations? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. Our next item is TE 31.14, 925, 951 Yonge Street. Oh, sorry, yes. I just jumped ahead. I recognize there's two Wellington addresses, so forgive me, folks. I'm going to go back. TE 31.13, 482 to 488 Wellington Street West. Zoning amendment application request for directions report. Are there any members of the public here to speak to this item? We're on item number 13. Okay, seeing none. Members with questions of staff? Seeing none. Members to speak? Councillor Cressy?
Yeah, and this is my last request for directions to my colleagues. Thank you for the indulgence. I will be moving staff recommendations, again, to direct the city solicitor and our staff to attend the OMB in opposition to this file as it's proposed.
All those in favor of the staff recommendations? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.14. I was eager to come to this because it has a very long name. 1925 to 1951 Yonge Street, 17 to 21 Millwood Road, and 22 Davisville Avenue. Official plan amendment and zoning amendment applications. Request for directions report. We have one registered speaker, Andy Gort, South Eglinton Ratepayers and Residents Association. If there are any other members of the public here to speak to this, please let the clerk know, and we will update the speakers list. The floor is yours, Andy. Go ahead, 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Speaker, and members of the TEY Council. My name is Andy Gort, and I'm the president of the South Eglinton Residents Association. Before I start, I wanted to thank the Council for your support for the OMB reform that we saw a proclamation yesterday for the new LPAT format. And in particular, I wanted to thank our councillor, Josh Matlow, who has been basically pursuing this matter for a long time and with a lot of persistence. And the community is very appreciative of all the council members' effort in this area. So thank you very much from the community. About this development, it is a landmark site. It's at the corner of Davisville and Yonge. It's adjacent to the Davisville Public School. It needs a development. It has been kind of semi-derelict for a long period of time. There are a number of heritage locations that have to be dealt with at some point in time on that site. We are dealing with a fairly professional developer and quite an open one. We just aren't aligned in terms of what he wants and what we think is good planning. The report that's in front of you is a very good report, a very comprehensive report. So we thank David Dreger for preparing the report. We just have a couple small minor points with the report, being that we still would like to get a community consultation meeting. Things have moved fairly rapidly, and we are looking for a potential to have multiple access to this development as opposed to just one. The main area that we really would like to talk about with you is changing conditions in the Yonge and Eglinton area. We're starting to see some real significant stresses on infrastructure. There's a lot of development going on there, and we compliment city planning for raising at least one of those in the report related to whether there is enough water and sewage and stormwater. In addition, what we're starting to see now is serious issues on schooling and serious issues in terms of transportation capability at peak hours to the downtown area and then back. And we have only seen 15% of developments that have been approved in our area that are actually completed. So there is a lot more to come. What we are asking for is that in addition to the request in the report, the recommendation in the report to withhold issuance of any orders on the amendment and zoning bylaw amendment on the development pending water, etc., that we also put one on for transit capacity to the downtown and for school capacity in the area. And I would like to talk a couple of minutes about those particular issues and why we feel that way. You do have in the letter, we did distribute an addendum. If you look at the transportation one, it's a chart from the TTC from 2016. It basically shows that we are, when the train comes in the morning southbound, we are 75 to 80% full when it passes the 401. So we've heard a lot about capacity issues on the Danforth line. I don't think we've heard too much about the growth of ridership north of the 401. And even though we are anticipating an improvement in capacity because of the automated train controls, even with that, our forecast when we did modeling says that by 2023, that train, even with the increased capacity, will be 90% full by the time it passes the 401. And at that stage, already today, we are mostly full most mornings at Eglinton and really full at Davisville. We haven't seen more than 15% of our developments. There's 8,000 units coming in the area that I represent, south of Eglinton and east of Yonge alone. We have the LRT coming in 2021. We are getting to a stage where 2 or 3 years from now, we'll start to see some real congestion in that area. And we really should be at a stage now where we say developments have to wait till that is resolved. The second one is on the education front. We're starting to run now already into overcapacity on the Anglican school. Typically, it's always the schools where most of the growth is in the apartment neighborhoods. They have moved all the grade 6s to another school. Now that school is in trouble. They're moving the boundaries for the schools around, but we're seeing a tremendous amount of growth in the area. Again, only 15% of the buildings completed. And we're wondering whether we're seeing an issue about affordability where multiple families are moving into buildings.
Andy, thank you. I suspect there may be some questions for you. Are there any questions of the speaker? Councillor Fragedakis.
Well, thanks very much, Andy, for, if I may call you Andy, for coming out and speaking on this item today. I was wondering, are you aware of a report that came to the TTC board about 2 meetings ago that actually spoke about the capacity, overcapacity issues on Line 1, and in particular highlighted that from Eglinton to College, that those stations were actually operating at overcapacity?
Yes, I do, but the issue is there that didn't focus on what is happening north of Eglinton. So our focus is what is happening north of Eglinton in the York region and in North York, and that's where the growth is. So we might focus on those particular stations, but we have to start looking further north.
No, and I think, well, I certainly am, because I know that people that I know that live at Yonge and Shepherd can't actually get on at Shepherd and take the train north to Finch in order to come back south, in order to be on a train. But I was just wondering if you were aware of the conversation we were having at TTC a few meetings ago. Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Thank you, sir. Are there any questions are there any other questions of the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, Andy. Our next speaker is Max Allen. Max, welcome back. We missed you, or you missed us.
I figure as long as I was here, I might as well talk about everything. This one, however, I have a suggestion for you. Young Eglinton is now experiencing what wards 20 and 27 have gone through for the past years, and that is an infrastructure question. And I want to call your attention not only to hard infrastructure, which is the subject before you today, but soft infrastructure also. The city requires, as part of a complete application for a development, a study of 5 areas of soft infrastructure in the general neighborhood of the development. What area is chosen for analysis is up to the developer and their consultant. But this study, which is done of soft infrastructure availability, dies after it's made. Our experience at the board, particularly, is that when we try to raise the question of the context the adequacy of soft infrastructure in the context of the development, that it doesn't go anywhere. To put it harshly, it seems that the city receives these reports and then files them away. I think that soft infrastructure needs some effective statutory weaponry, and it needs a champion among councillors. I don't know who would do this, but it needs a champion among councillors to make the soft infrastructure study meaningful. And that's what I'm recommending you think about. I don't know who would do this, but somebody possibly in the Young Eglinton area or north of there where development is becoming an avalanche needs to take a close look at the way a CFS study is dealt with after it's been produced. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Max. Are there any questions of the speaker? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Max. Are there any other members of the public here to speak to this matter who would like to speak to this matter? Seeing none, members with questions of staff? Councillor Mallow.
The clerk has advised me that I've submitted a rather lengthy motion to them, and they're still working on it. May I just ask the clerk, would you like me to hold this down a few more minutes?
Okay.
So if we could just go on to the next item, give them that time, and then we'll come right back.
Yes, of course, Councillor. So we'll hold this down for Councillor Mallow while the clerks prepare and finish the motion, which means we'll just proceed to TE 31.15. 55-95 Lakeshore Boulevard East, 33-53 Freeland Street, and 20 and 15 Cooper Street, official plan amendment and zoning amendment, request for directions report. Are there any members of the public here to speak to this item? Seeing none, are there any members who have questions of staff? Seeing none, then members to speak. Councillor Troisi.
Yes, hi, I have a motion. I move the staff recommendations with an amendment to the parking ratio. You know, we've talked about great developments today. Here's yet another great example of a great development, and I'd just like to highlight why. So this application moves forward the revitalization of the waterfront as a vibrant, complete community. In addition to the appropriate mix of residential, retail, and office uses, this development will build out an impressive public realm, including new protected cycling lanes. The transportation master plan will lead to an extension of Harbour Street from Yonge to Lower Jarvis, creating a better network to move people through this new community. As well, the Lower Yonge Precinct Plan outlined the community facilities that would be required to support this new neighbourhood, and I'd like to highlight the benefits of that staff have secured through this approval process. The creation of one large 1-hectare public park, dedication of 10% of residential GFA to affordable rental housing, 25% 2- and 3-bedroom residential units, a 10,000 square foot not-for-profit child care center rather, path connections to 1 Yonge and the future development at 10 Lower Jarvis, the incorporation of important heritage structures into the redevelopment, a significant public art contribution, and funding for the improvement of the Jack Layton Ferry Terminal. There's a $1 million contribution for that. Funding for the additional infrastructure improvements under the Transportation Master Plan. And there are so many other less glamorous issues that have been dealt with, like the ongoing work to ensure new development wasn't inhibited by the Red Pass Sugars facility on the waterfront. After discussions with transportation staff, I am moving an amendment to the parking ratio that will result in a reduction to the number of required spaces. Along with the good planning and significant public benefits achieved in the staff report, I believe this parking ratio is in line with the other approvals in the downtown core as car dependency has decreased. I'd like to thank the staff and the applicant for achieving a development that is not only good for the site, but also creates the next waterfront community that can be enjoyed by all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any questions of the mover?
Yeah, I know.
Is that a speech I hear beginning from Councillor? No. No? Okay.
I was an aside.
Are there any other speakers then? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the amendment? Any opposed? Carried. Item as amended. Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much.
Good.
We're ready, so we will come back to item number 14, and I will like to acknowledge Councillor Mallow, who has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment. In summary, this is both about consulting with the community about vehicular access. This has been requested by the community, and it's a reasonable request. And also adding requests to look at both school capacity and transportation capacity. And I drafted this, obviously, in concert with city planning, who are nodding and support these requests because they know it's important. The challenge that we've had in Yonge and Eglinton for many years is that, and this is one of the reasons why many of us have been advocating for abolishing the Ontario Municipal Board. Thank you, Councillor Wong Tam, is because for far too many years, the necessary social services and infrastructure simply have not kept up with the pace of growth. And over again, we see developments approved, and we have anecdotal evidence within our community that we're concerned about utility capacity. We know, for example, when we try to get on the subway in the morning or afternoon rush hours, that you are typically waiting 3-4 trains to get on, and once you finally get on, you're squeezed in like a sardine. We experience the overcrowding, but this has been anecdotal on our part. We know, for example, that the TDSB is scrambling right now to figure out school capacity. I was just in a meeting with Trustee Laskin recently, like in the last couple of weeks, where she shared with the community that not only have they already moved the 6th grade classes out of the elementary schools in our Yonge and Eglinton neighborhood, put them in the middle school because there wasn't enough room within the elementary schools to accommodate K-6 any longer, but now they're having to figure out where to put additions and portables, etc., to be able to meet the needs of a growing population. So we always say we want more families, more kids to live in the Midtown downtown area, but then we don't have schools for them to go to. That's simply bad planning. And I could go on. I mean, it goes everywhere from recreation to green space to you name it. It's about quality of life. And for us in Yonge and Eglinton, it's never, or it should not be, a debate about whether you like development or are you anti-development. That's always been sort of a narrow way to describe it. What we believe in Midtown is that development should be based on good urban planning principles and a focus on contributing to the quality of life of community. So in other words, it's about good development, good planning, rather than just build condos, build condos, build condos, build condos, build condos. That's not the way that communities are planned. That's a way to make developers lots of money, and that shouldn't be the focus of our planning. So we've been focusing on a number of different things. One is abolishing the OMB, and we've made a lot of progress on that. I want to congratulate the government on the new reforms, including the establishment of the Local Planning Appeals Tribunal. And I want to thank Councillor Wong Tam, who's been a remarkable partner in that pursuit, along with the rest of my colleagues. We've also initiated, a few years ago, I initiated the Midtown in Focus study that looks at everything that I just mentioned, social services, infrastructure, along with heritage preservation, et cetera, to, rather than just have anecdotal evidence, to have data, to have real facts to be able to back up our arguments, the things we already know. Now we need to be able to show it so that we can be successful. And deal with each development ad hoc to be able to make sure that it's the best development possible. So, going back to Midtown in Focus, an outcome of being able to provide that evidence, those facts that we know to be true, is that we know that there is a utility challenge in Yonge and Eglinton. And that's why I want to thank staff for acknowledging that, for the good work that they've done, and for saying this isn't just about fighting a development at the OMB. It's about saying, regardless of what the plan is, we need to make sure that people have water who live in Yonge and Eglinton. Now, that should be a bare minimum request. There should be water. But I'm also adding, in concert with city staff, that they also should be able to know that they've got transportation to be able to get to work or get to school. And they also should know that their kids are going to be going to a local school rather than seeing those stupid signs that say your kid may not even be able to go to the local school and they might have to be bussed out of the area. That's poor planning, and we need to reverse that. Lastly, I want to speak just for a moment about the development itself. Speaking of poor planning, Councillor Troisi was speaking with great accolades about what good planning is about. This is bad planning. The developer wants to build towers on a tall mid-rise site, and they want to encroach into the neighborhood designated area on Millwood. And our concern is that once you start building towers in neighborhoods, then you lose control. The precedent is set. Goodbye Millwood, goodbye Belsize, et cetera, et cetera. They will keep going. We need to set a line in the sand to make sure that we protect our neighborhoods and put the tall buildings where they belong and small buildings where they belong. That's planning. We also want to make sure that this works with the new Midtown and Focus secondary plan recommendations as well. So again, I want to thank staff for their remarkable work, and I also want to conclude by acknowledging the great advocacy and work of Andy Gort and the South Eglinton Ratepayers and Residents Association. There's often this sort of contest in our city between what we colloquially refer to as YIMBYs and NIMBYs. People who say yes, yes, yes to everything, and people who say no, 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 I don't want anything more than one story. The way that Andy and Sarah work is that they thoughtfully consider every issue. What a remarkable way to do things. They support tall towers where tall towers belong. They oppose the wrong plans where the wrong plans are being proposed. And they always have a focus on quality of life for the community. That's the thoughtfulness that gets results, and I want to acknowledge that kind of work that I've seen in our local community. So I support the recommendations. I encourage you to support my amendments as well, and I look forward to the community consultation on the vehicular access as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Matlow. Are there any questions for the mover? Seeing none, Councillor Layton to speak as well.
I just wanted to add one thing to this motion because it's been flagged a couple times now about school capacity in growing neighborhoods. I think it would be a surprise to many in the public to know that the school board, the Toronto District School Board, does not collect any development charges for the expansion or building of new schools. Unfortunately, they specifically are pulled out of the ability to apply development charges, meaning the children within all of these new developments are expected to go to existing schools without any capital to upgrade them, which is a real shame, and our province needs to take another look. And I'll take a page out of Councillor Matlow and former Councillor Vaughan's book, that if you have a candidate for provincial office on your doorstep in the next election, you have to ask them very seriously if they will support extending education development charges to the TDSB in order for us to address all of the growth. In Yonge and Eglinton, unfortunately, the damage is done in the last 20 years of not collecting education development charges are now having their impact on our education system. So shame on our current Liberal provincial government for not making this change sooner. We have lost 20 years, and we are in danger of losing yet another year or two until this change could be made right.
Thank you very much, Councillor Layton. Any other members who would like to speak to this matter? Okay. Yeah. So seeing none, we have a motion on the screen. All those in favor? Any opposed? Item as amended? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. We have now arrived at TE 31.16, 794 Gerrard Street East, zoning amendment request for direction report. There are a number of speakers who are registered here. I'd like to call Elizabeth Brule, George Popper, followed by David Johnson. But we'll start with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, are you here? Okay. We can come back to Elizabeth. Is George Popper here? George, welcome. Okay. I will set the clock for you. We've got 5 minutes when you're ready. Okay. Okay. Is that David Johnson with you? No. Oh. Okay, no problems. The clock has started. Go ahead.
Okay. Madam Chairman and members of Community Council, nearing the tail end of my architectural career, I stand before you probably for the last time on a proposal for a mid-rise building. I'm very proud of this project as I feel it is an excellent example of an avenues building. As you know, avenues buildings is an official plan concept of how the city should grow in a healthy and progressive way. It is following a long tradition of compact European cities with mixed-use mid-rise buildings on principal streets. When I first started practicing in Toronto almost 40 years ago, the idea was already enshrined in the official plan. In those days, it was called Main Street buildings. As an interesting aside, I'm very proud of the Main Street building I designed at the corner of Yonge and Alexandra Boulevard near Sporting Life that found its way to the cover of the official plan. Now, not every street is considered an avenue on the plan. In fact, not all of Gerrard is designated as an avenue. Only this stretch between Broadview and Jones is an avenue. One of the key ingredients in designing avenues is public transit, as avenues are designed to enhance the pedestrian experience and have less reliance on cars. In terms of transit, the streetcar stops right in front of the proposed building and will take people into the heart of the city. In addition, both the proposed Smart Track and Relief Line stations will be half a block from the site, so the site is well served by transit now and will be even better served in the coming years. Our proposal at the northeast corner of Gerrard and Logan is for a 58-unit, 6-story building, with most of the units being 2 bedrooms or larger, so it's very family-oriented. The 6th floor is pulled well back from the perimeter and as such will hardly be visible. The building is almost perfectly conforms to the city's mid-rise guidelines and is almost entirely within the angular plane. Please see the angular plane on your screens. There is therefore no shadowing or overview impact on the homes to the north. Now, staff had concerns about the height, so we have lowered the building by 2 meters. That height came mostly out of the height of the ground floor, which the Urban Design Department thought was too high. All the units also lost ceiling height, some by as much as 2 feet. With the beer store moving back into the building, the public expressed concern about the lack of retail visitor parking. We have addressed that to the satisfaction of staff by adding 3 visitor spaces and carrying out a number of studies. Our parking consultant examined the existing beer store on the property and determined that many users are coming on foot. That supports the information that we received that sales of 24 bottle cases are declining while sales of 6-packs and large singles are increasing. Our traffic engineers also conducted 2 other studies of other beer stores downtown in urban locations and 2 LCBOs with little or no on-site parking. Both studies showed that 50 to 95% of customers come by non-auto. The portion of Logan Avenue in front of the building will be changed from a one-way to a 2-way street. This will force trucks to leave the site via Gerrard without driving on Logan and disturbing the residents in the neighborhood. This idea was well received by the public. In addition, the 24-meter wide right-of-way allows for wide sidewalks and street trees, which would not be possible further west on Gerrard. So we have a unique situation here with a wide right-of-way. Now, staff and residents have recently raised a concern over the lack of accessible parking. After considerable effort, we have redesigned the ground floor to add an accessible space. This happened just in the last few days. This has not been formally submitted and reviewed yet, but is part of our settlement offer. Having reviewed the zoning bylaw to the OBC and accessible applicable legislation, we are satisfied that we can satisfy the issues identified in the staff report. We are supportive, therefore, of the staff recommendation. So here's our fine avenues building for your consideration. It begs the question, why aren't there more buildings like this popping up all along the avenues? Think of the Danforth, miles and miles of subway and nothing other than 2-story buildings on the Danforth. Why is the reason for that? The simple answer is that the economics of mid-rise buildings is very difficult. So let's step back and look at our stretch of Gerrard. Although it is designated as an avenue and has been for over 50 years, have we seen many other mixed-use buildings going up? No. None have ever been built and none are proposed. None. So when an avenue building of this quality comes before you, one that has virtually zero adverse impact on the residential neighborhood, I think it is incumbent on everyone who believes in the healthy growth of our city to enthusiastically support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George. Are there any questions of the speaker? No? Thank you. I'd like to call David Johnson to speak. David, welcome. Just come to the center table, and I will start your clock when you are prepared, and you'll have 5 minutes. You just let me know.
Hello, everyone, council family members. I'm born in Toronto here, and I am a member of the 501 Logan House. It's a rooming house by an organization called the Toronto Christian Resource Center, and they take on men from shelters to help rebuild their lives. And they were graciously able to take me on. I've been living in that house since 2011. And I'm positioned in the backyard unit, and with the building going up beside us, when the sun is in the south, I'm gonna have to say goodbye to the sun. I guess I'll just have the shade. But suffering from chronic depression and anxiety, I tend to sit out in the backyard a lot, because when I try to go out in public, I get a little bit worked up in my anxiety. Sorry, I'm nervous. This is my first time doing this. For my appreciation of Toronto Christian Resource Center, the house itself is over 100 years old, and the house was donated by the owner to the church. I forget the name of the church, but they're affiliated with the Toronto Christian Resource Center. So, as my appreciation, I would like to have the house on the side facing the laneway to be protected from the dust. And maybe I was thinking like a screen of some sort to help protect the house. And the agency had a concern about the foundation of the house, being that it's over 100 years old, with the drilling and whatever happens. So I just would like to ask the property management if 501 Logan could be somehow protected and covered by the dust and whatnot, I guess. So I'd just like to say thank you for having me, and it's a real pleasure and an honor to be in everyone's presence here as the council, as I was born in Toronto, and I wear my pin with a very proud heart. So thank you for having me.
David, thank you very much for your remarks. Are there any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, David, thank you. I'd like to call Elizabeth Brule. I called her earlier and she was not in the room. Perhaps she's come back. No, I don't see her. Okay, so are there any other members of the public here for item number 16? Seeing none, we're going to take this into Community Council. Any questions of staff? Don't see any hands going up. Members to speak? Councillor Fletcher.
Yes, I do have a motion. I'm going to send this forward to City Council without recommendation and ask that the Chief Planner, City Planning, report directly on further resolving any of the issues that are outlined, because what wasn't mentioned to you is this is now at the OMB, so there's an issues list that we're looking at. And to add 2 other things, and that would be the incorporation of car share, provision of plug-ins for electric vehicles. And this has been the subject of a recent community meeting because it was taken pretty quickly to the OMB, so it hasn't had the type of community process that I would normally like to have in my community. While the community meeting had a lot to say, and I think there are some very good things about this building. There was an issue around parking, streets, and other things that people felt they didn't really have a chance to discuss until we came to this meeting. And I'd like to thank planning for agreeing to host such a meeting, because once something gets to the OMB, it kind of gets off the radar of the community itself. And having Mr. Johnson here for the Christian Resource Center, which is next door, and I think all of us who support affordable housing and supportive housing understand what an important organization that is throughout the city, and CRC has a number of sites in Ward 30. I have asked what I can do to ensure that protection. So that would come probably at the site plan, Mr. Johnson, when the report is, when the site plan is being approved, it says what they're going to, exactly how they're going to build things, that at that point, I would ask for a community liaison committee, but other things that would take place that would protect your building in particular, understanding that people there are living in supportive housing, and there's issues that you've raised with us today, and also include some of the housing staff in that to make sure we get the best circumstances for this to be built. I'm assuming it will be built. It's just a number of issues that still have to be worked out, and I think that there can be those discussions between now and council to see if we can continue on with the revisions that were turned in and some of these other issues that have come forward at the community meeting. So I'd like to move that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any other councillors who would like to speak? No, seeing none. We have the motion to defer this matter, refer the matter without recommendations. Yep. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. The next item, we have now arrived at our 11 o'clock item. The time is 5 minutes to 12. We're perfectly on schedule by Toronto East Shore Community Standard Time. This is item number TE 31.17, demolition of a designated heritage property, 421 Roncesvalles. Are there any members of the public here to speak to this particular matter? Seeing none, we'll bring this inside. Members with questions of staff? No? Okay. And members to speak. Councillor Perks.
Thank you very much. I'm a little bit disappointed there's no one here representing the applicant because I'd like to be able to read them the Riot Act out loud. This is an instance of a developer moving to develop a property where there's a heritage building, coming forward with an application that was completely unacceptable, being told it was unacceptable, appealing to the Ontario Municipal Board, and then just before our pre-hearing date, submitting an application to demolish the heritage building altogether, which wasn't even shown in their plans. Yeah, I've never seen one like this. I've never seen an applicant with such flagrant disregard of the public interest, good planning, heritage buildings, and community opinion. If they were here, I would tell them, don't darken my door again, but they're not here, so I'll have to call them and say that. So I encourage you, please, to accept the recommendation from the Preservation Board, not to demolish.
Any other members who would like to speak to this matter? No? Okay. All those in favor of the recommendations from the Preservation Board? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you. TE 31.18, inclusion on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register, College Street properties. We have at least 2 speakers, maybe more. Don Young, as well as Chris Spoke. Don, welcome.
So my name is Don Young. I'm speaking on behalf of Cawthra Mansions Housing Cooperative. And I'm here today, and I did prepare a long presentation, but I've had recent conversations with Councillor Cressy and the head of Heritage Services. And I think that we are going to meet with Heritage Services tomorrow to find out more about the restrictions imposed by this inclusion. And so I'm really not going to say any more at this time.
Okay, thank you very much, Don. Are there any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you. I'd like to call Chris Spoke, Housing Matters. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
We're going to set the clock for you. You have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Chris Spoke. I'm a member of Housing Matters. We're a group of Torontonians who advocate for increased housing supply to address the housing availability and affordability crisis that is pricing many renters, young people, and middle-class families out of our city. So we take very seriously the common sense notion that if we want more people to have housing in Toronto, we're going to need to build more housing. I appreciate being granted the opportunity today to address the inclusion to the City of Toronto Heritage Register of 21 properties on Broadview Avenue and then the next item, I believe, is another 24 properties on College Street. With such a large number of properties, I will not comment on the heritage value of any individual property, though I do think that we should be mindful of the necessarily subjective nature of these judgments. Instead, I would like to make a statement in principle about how this process undermines housing availability and affordability in Toronto. When a property is added to the register, it makes it more difficult to maximize the use of its land, including through the modernization of older buildings to suit current needs. It makes it more difficult to build enough new housing in Toronto, which is a very big problem given that we have a 1.1% rental vacancy rate. The additional layer of review for development application adds time and costs, both of which are ultimately borne by buyers and tenants. The uncertainty and risk can also act to render development projects unfeasible at the margin. As the average price across all housing types now exceeds $700,000 in the city, it is imperative that we maximize the opportunities to build housing throughout the city, especially in transit-accessible neighborhoods. The properties listed on College Street and Broadview Avenue are all immediately accessible by bus or streetcar. College Street is classified as a major arterial and Broadview Avenue as a minor arterial, and both are considered avenues in the city's official planned urban structure map. We believe that the focus should be on encouraging new mixed-use development in these areas. While it is important to balance the city's past with its current needs, we encourage you to consider very carefully the impact on affordability of preserving an ever-growing number of properties as being off limits to meaningful redevelopment and intensification. Whether we like it or not, heritage preservation is often used as a NIMBY tactic advocated for by established homeowners clinging to the status quo. We believe that Toronto is a fantastic city and that we should be looking forward to opportunities to welcome current and future residents into its vibrant neighborhoods, and not looking backwards or sacrificing our dynamism in the interest of preserving beams, bricks, and mortar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Are there any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you. Are there any other members of the public here to speak? I see you, sir. Would you like to come to the front here? And afterwards, we're going to need you to check in with the clerk just to register properly.
First of all, I'd like to thank the person who handwrit the address, my address. So I came here because it was a City of Toronto correspondence that was handwritten. So I was like, this might be important. I should open it up.
And would you mind just giving us your name?
Anthony Arts.
Thank you.
I'm the owner of the property 357 College Street that's listed on the heritage properties. And I'm very proud that you think it's a beautiful heritage building. I restored it myself. Half of the building is faux historic on the one side. But I have 3 or 4 concerns about the limitation that a historic designation would be. Pardon?
Can you please allow the deputy to speak? We will have opportunities for you for questions afterwards.
Okay, I have to understand that too. I don't know.
I'll reinstate at least 20 seconds for you.
Okay, the first of all is the change in College Street study has now, the site that it's on will allow over the next period of time 7 stories or something like that. And if I have to stay within the 3.5 stories that are there right now, then that will be highest. I might be taxed at a higher rate because the land values around me would be higher. There are 18 stories, 11-story buildings in the neighborhood. So I'm great with maintaining the facade, but I would not necessarily support anything that would restrict the use of the site. There's nothing inside anymore due to the fact that the renovation we did about 7 or 8 years ago required complete fire separation, and a lot of the details have to be removed, so it's more of an exterior facade than anything. The other thing would be future application hassle. I plan on owning the building for the duration of my life, and maybe in 15 years there'll be a change of use. And as it stands right now, I have a application to develop the site, including 353, 355, into one property that completely maintains 357 as it is. And as it is right now, this process, Committee of Adjustments, this board right here, it's about a 6-month wait to get to my committee date. And I can't imagine what this historic thing might add to future development. I mean, development times, because maybe within 15 years, I would like to find a new use for the property. The other third or fourth concern would be just how it affects property value, because as people bid on things, it's what they can do with it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. Are there any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, thank you, Anthony. Any other members of the public here to speak to this matter? We're on matter number 18. Okay, seeing none, we'll just bring this into Community Council. Members with questions of staff, Councillor Cressy.
Thank you, and I'll direct this to Mary McDonald from Heritage Preservation Services. So this is a batch listing of 25 properties, is that correct?
That's correct.
And these properties were identified over the course of the 3-year College Street study?
Yes.
Now, can you describe the difference between a listing and a designated property? Because this is a listing, this isn't designation.
Yes, listing and designation are quite distinct from each other. Listing indicates that the property is of heritage value or interest, and it means essentially that if you want to demolish the property, you give the city 60 days notice of the demolition to further consider the value of the building. Redevelopment would be subject to conservation policies within the official plan, but we see across the city hundreds of developments on heritage properties that successfully blend old and new. It doesn't restrict use. It doesn't create any height restriction or lowering beyond what's in the College Street study. So the listings are meant to work with the College Street OPA, and so it doesn't mean that because a property is listed within that study's work that you are not eligible to apply for and work on a development that includes old and new within the new regimes that are set out in the OP policies.
Okay, and so, I mean, in effect, a listing prevents demolition without heritage review and ensures that if a redevelopment proposal is brought in, that you're part of the conversation. It doesn't identify the attributes as per a designation that have to be preserved or anything of that sort.
No, the listing report gives an indication of the attributes that we believe at this point have value. We are certainly always interested to know information that owners may have about changes to the properties that we're unaware of. But this gives you a baseline, but it does not represent the final list of anything, and it doesn't regulate in that way.
Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, one final question. We heard from Cawthra Co-op. I understand that you've directed your staff to meet with members of Cawthra Co-op prior to council. Would you be prepared to ensure that those meetings happen prior to council so that we can have those conversations before a final decision is made?
Yeah, absolutely. And even without a motion, I'd like to meet with the other deputant who spoke, who has concerns about the listing.
Okay, great. We'll make sure you connect after. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Perks, questions.
I have a question for Ms. McDonald. If she, yeah? A question. Just this one. To be clear, even with the properties that are listed and designated, we have enough land in our official plan designated for growth to be able to accommodate our official plan growth targets?
Through you, Madam Chair, we absolutely do.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are having trouble coping with the growth, as Councillor Matlow pointed out. We also, even on College Street, under the College Street study, there's quite a lot of room for intensification on College Street itself.
So there's no issue that we don't have lands available for developers to develop in order to meet the provincial growth targets?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for staff? Seeing none. Members to speak. Councillor Cressy.
Just a couple comments. First of all, I want to I'll thank our deputants who were here and reaffirm, as we've heard from Heritage Preservation Services, I think a real willingness and a desire to meet with both of the co-op and the property owner who's here in between. And I know a meeting is being set up with Cawthra Co-op, and so that meeting can certainly happen as well, and we'll make sure it does. I want to bring this back to how this came about, this batch listing. We spent over 3 years as a community developing the College Street study. And the College Street study, which I want to thank staff for being a part of, was done on the basis of how do we plan for development so that we embrace development. That's why we proactively as a community said, what are we prepared to say yes to, as opposed to us always responding to a developer's vision. So we did the hard work of rolling up our sleeves as 3 years across 5 residents associations and a community to embrace a forward-looking plan for how we both grow along College Street without losing sight of our past. We did that work. And I would say very clearly to the representative from Housing Matters here, coming and just opposing heritage listing sounds very NIMBY to me. As opposed to being part of the conversations when we developed a proactive vision. And I didn't see any Housing Matter activists at that. This listing, very clearly, what it does is 2 things. On demolition, it ensures that we don't have fly-by-night demolitions. I don't know why anybody wants a fly-by-night demolition. And so it ensures that there's a 60-day notice if there's a demolition permit, which Heritage sees. And the other ensures that when and if redevelopment proposals come in, and we envision redevelopment along College Street, that Heritage is part of that conversation. It doesn't impact renovations in the immediate, it doesn't freeze buildings in time, and it doesn't restrict the use of buildings. And so I just want to ensure the distinction between a listing and a designation is there. But I think the big picture, because this discussion today has been brought up to a bigger level, the city needs affordable housing. Yes, we do. The city needs increased rental housing. Yes, we do. The city also needs to ensure that we maintain and properly conserve our heritage. Yes, we also need to do that. These are not mutually exclusive. In fact, we did a College Street study so that these would not be mutually exclusive. And so I'm terribly surprised and frankly appalled at Housing Matters for coming here today and saying that to preserve our past by virtue of stopping fly-by-night demolitions is equated with not supporting rental housing or affordable housing. This false choice that says you can either have rental housing or heritage in a city that's growing at our pace is simply wrong. To say that yes in my backyard has to be equated with supporting development always, supporting bad developments, supporting luxury condominiums that are too tall and don't service the rental housing market is not YIMBY. And I would argue, as I am constantly barraged on Twitter by Housing Matters about supporting high-end luxury condominium developments as opposed to actually rolling up the sleeves and coming and working with us when we do a College Street study to support proper development, that this attention is totally and completely misplaced. And I look forward to working with the real YIMBYs who are working and live in my neighborhood, who rolled up their sleeves as part of the College Street study. And like our folks with Cawthra Co-op, are keen to be part of the conversation to how do we add further affordable housing, whether at Cawthra or 2 or 3 College or other places. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Other councillors to speak, Councillor Perks and then Councillor Matlow.
I just wanted to add a couple thoughts to what Councillor Cressy was saying. There is something deeply disingenuous about the argument that this particular heritage listing has anything to do with our ability to accommodate population growth and affordability within the City of Toronto. Councillor Cressy makes the very good point that there's a false choice. We heard from the Director of Planning for Toronto East York that, in fact, no, there's more than adequate land available in our official plan to accommodate the population growth. That's an established fact. Anyone who makes a claim that taking these particular properties out or listing them and saying that there's a process if a development wants to happen there is not only being disingenuous, they're misleading the public with those claims. And finally, there's a part of the affordable housing argument in the City of Toronto that's begun to creep in that I think needs to be responded to. There's this suggestion that somehow by having planning rules, we're restricting the supply, and when you restrict the supply, the prices go up, and that's why things aren't affordable. The evidence is absolutely clear that that is not the case. There is a cost of constructing a unit of rental housing and then operating and maintaining that rental housing that is the fixed cost. There's a cost to the financing and so on and so forth. And there's work been done by the Urban Institute that shows that below a certain dollar value, it doesn't matter. You could give the land away for free, waive all the development charges, and the cost of developing those units still doesn't pencil out, right? The amount of rent that you can collect from someone who's working at minimum wage is insufficient to cover the private market cost of building a unit of rental housing, even if the land is free and we charge no development fees or taxes on it. The fact of the matter is, for true affordability, the private market, at least in today's conditions, can never deliver affordable rental housing for people in the bottom income quintile. The math is just clear. And frankly, that's the reason why now we have to provide direct operating subsidy as a government to Toronto community housing, because the rents we are able to collect don't cover the operating and maintenance cost of those units. So anyone who tells you you solve the affordable housing problem by removing market constraints is deceiving you. The only way we can do it is with direct government intervention, either by the creation of government-owned housing through TCHC, or supports for co-ops, or subsidies to not-for-profit housing. You need public intervention in the marketplace to build affordable housing. The marketplace will never, ever build it. And that's been confirmed by work that we received at the Tenants Advisory Group just 2-3 weeks ago. The rent of a bachelorette on the open market right now is about $850, $900 a month. The housing portion of someone who's receiving social assistance in the City of Toronto is $400 a month. The private market will never, never provide adequate affordable housing in the City of Toronto by itself, and trying to increase supply by ignoring our heritage values or other public interest goals is a fool's errand, and anyone who's spent 5 minutes actually researching this knows that fact.
Thank you very much, Councillor Perks, followed by Councillor Matlow and then Councillor Bailão.
I'm not going to repeat the points that my two colleagues have made, because I completely subscribe to them and I agree with them. And I want to just remind us that the Tenants Issues Committee has made the affordability of rental in this city our top priority, in a number of different ways, with a number of different recommendations and motions that we move forward with. That is our top priority. But as Councillor Cressy said, let us not conflate the two priorities, heritage preservation and the import of having more affordable housing in our city. But the thing that I wanted to contribute to this conversation is an acknowledgement of the work that our staff have done. I forget what maybe it was a year ago or more, that I went public with my frustration with our heritage preservation staff, because I'd move a motion, I think along with Councillor Wong Tam, to ask for a proactive survey of sites throughout our city, like Los Angeles and other cities have done. And there were subsequent motions, I believe, was it Councillor Fragadakis and Councillor Shiner and others? It was clear that there was a council, I think a collective council interest in seeing heritage preservation made a priority. And this came after a number of different incidents, including up near Roselawn and Eglinton, north of my ward, where a Bank of Montreal building was, as Councillor Cressy had described it, a fly-by-night demolition, before there was an opportunity to really explore whether or not it merited designation. And as Councillor Cressy said, listing allows us the ability to have that 60-day pause to consider what the right plan for that site should be, rather than allowing the developer to decide for us. That's really what the difference between listing and designation is. It allows us to make an evidence-based decision along with the recommendations from our heritage staff and the board on what the best plan for it should be. It does not sterilize the site, and anyone who tells you that is wrong. So I criticized staff because I felt that they weren't moving quickly enough and they hadn't presented the recommendations that all of us needed to act on, because Toronto, I think it's fair to say, has a shameful legacy when it comes to heritage preservation. You look around the world, you look at Boston, you look at Montreal and Quebec and a city in Canada, you look at cities around the world. I mean, they've done a better job than Toronto. And this is about decades of neglect, decades of this notion that that demolishing heritage properties means progress. It was often called that. And I think it's sad that we lost a lot of our old town. I mean, St. Lawrence neighborhood is really almost the best vestige of what we were able to retain. But even St. Lawrence doesn't have as much as it should have had. Unfortunately, St. Lawrence turned into a lot of parking lots. So we've got to do better. And what I want to say is, since some of those conversations were had, I realized that there was quiet work. Even when I expressed my frustration and council motions were being moved, there was already quiet work being done to prepare heritage preservation for the next chapter in their work. Quiet, important work. And they were being quiet because they didn't want to tip off every landowner that maybe this work was being done. Maybe you should have a Christmas Eve fire or go at it in the middle of the night and demolish. So they were working quietly but deliberately to prepare for what they're doing now, which is remarkable work, inspiring work. What heritage preservation under the leadership of Mary MacDonald is doing is that they are going across our city and selecting with great deliberation and great thought where we should be doing these batch listings to proactively cover areas that should be considered for heritage preservation. And at the end of the day, maybe some will be protected, and perhaps heritage preservation will eventually recommend that some be removed from the list if that's the right thing. But they don't want to see developers run the show. So I really just want to acknowledge the work that Mary and her staff have done. Not only am I no longer frustrated, I'm really excited and really enthusiastic and grateful for the work that they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mallow. Councillor Bailao.
Thank you. I just want to go back to the issue of the affordable housing, because I think it's an interesting discussion that we're putting a lot of things together and mix it all in a big pot. And I very often say that when we talk about housing, we have to understand this is an ecosystem. And the way that we're not going to finance our way out of it. We're not going to subsidize our way out of this. There's no way that governments can subsidize our way out of this. The same way that you cannot put the other argument that the supply will solve the issue. It's not one or, because, you know, yes, the market will never produce social housing, but the supply does have an impact on the market housing that has an impact on affordability. We have to understand that we have families that make $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 that are being pushed out of this city, that cannot buy in this city, that cannot afford in this city. So we cannot put social housing and the affordability factor. They're not the same thing. They're part of the ecosystem, and they're part, and they influence each other, but they're not the same thing. And we need different solutions for different parts of the housing spectrum. So saying that, you know, just subsidize it and it will solve itself, that's not the answer. The same way that saying build more supply, we'll get all the answers for our housing system, it's not the answer. We need to be innovative. We need to bring the two of them to the table. We need both of them at the table, but we also need to build a city. And affordable housing cannot be an excuse for bad planning. That is the bottom line as well. We have to do both. The way that we plan and the way that we build our city needs to be done in an effective way, because the physical aspect of it has a huge impact also on the social way that the communities are going to interact in the way that they're going to develop. So we need to bring the two together. We need to find that middle point, that circle in the middle that creates the facility of supply and the affordability, and be, you know, bringing different kinds of housing and modular housing and the mid-rises and all that. And some places are towers and some places are not. But this is, it's complex. So trying to say that just build more is going to be the answer for housing. It's a disservice actually for the discussion. The same way that saying supply or just subsidize the thing is that because that's the solution. This is not a one-fits-all. This is a complex issue, and we need to work at this and find that middle ground. But also saying that because we need more supply and we should just build anything, everything, and anywhere and allow for it to trump all the planning principles and heritage and things like that, that is not healthy as well. We need to build a city that is going to stay here and deal with the issues of today and the issues of tomorrow and not create more issues for our future generations to deal with. And that requires good planning, both on the physical side and the social side.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bailão. Any other speakers? Seeing none, we do have the staff recommendations before us, and there is an amendment. Great. So the staff recommendations and the amendment are before us. Should we take them as a package? Are we agreeable? Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Yeah, so why don't we, if we can do some quick items, but I also recognize that Chris Spoke, who is from Housing Matter, is also registered for the next item. We could clear this very quickly. Otherwise, we're going to have to ask this gentleman to come back. Actually, Chris, were you speaking to both items in your first remark, or? It was a separate. I was very short. Okay, so let's, in the spirit of making sure that we're efficient, considering you've been sitting here for most of the morning, if you want to just take the front of the room, I'm going to acknowledge you, and you're going to have 5 minutes to speak. If you can keep your remarks brief, we'll deal with this matter. Okay, so I just want to read the title for TE 31.19, inclusion on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register. 778, 782, 792, 812, 814, 817, 822, 826, 846, 850, 849, 883, 895, 897, 905, 929, 931, 121, 1220 Broadview Avenue. Chris, go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that the purpose of our organization and my application is not to oppose heritage listings. We just wanted to make a word of caution and bring it top of mind that adding complexity and bureaucracy to an already complex and bureaucratic process can act to further constrain supply. I'm happy to take questions, and that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't believe there are any questions. Thank you very much, Chris. Any other speakers on this matter? Okay, seeing none, then questions of staff? Mary? Nope. Okay. Speakers, please. Councillor Fragedakis.
Yes, I'm going to be moving the staff recommendations and take this opportunity to thank staff for bringing this forward. Finally, I know that they've been very busy with other things. I'm sure Mary MacDonald will be very happy that I will stop begging her, as I have for these last 2.5 years, to bring this item to its natural conclusion, which is to bring forward this list of properties on Broadview that were part of the Broadview Avenue planning study that was some 2.5, almost 3 years in duration with the community. I'm not going to say what has already been said because I agree with all that has been said, but I do appreciate all that they do. I know that theirs is a tough job since there's really only a few of you doing this really important work in our city. So thanks very much, and I'd like a recorded vote.
Okay. Thank you very much. The recommendation is before us from the Preservation Board as well as, pardon me? 10 seconds, go ahead. If you guys want lunch, go ahead, 10 seconds.
10 seconds. That requiring that potential developers can't demolish without notice does not add complexity. It ensures we protect our city as we grow.
Okay, thank you very much. The recommendation before us from Preservation Board, recommendation to adopt outcomes from staff report. All those in favor ask for a recorded vote. Councillor Mihevik, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Cressy, Councillor Wong-Tam, Councillor Fragedakis, Councillor Layton, I see your hand is up, Councillor Perks, Councillor Troisi, Councillor Matlow, you are in the affirmative, Councillor Bailão, it is unanimous. Thank you very much. I would state that we're breaking for lunch, and we will reconvene at 1. Do we have time? We've got...
You're doing number 8. We have, we just put around the supplementary report.
Okay, so can I get a motion to extend so that we can do some quick items? Okay, all those in favor, extending to do some quick items? I will acknowledge Councillor Fletcher. What is your item number?
Item 8 that I was holding, the zoning, and I'm sending that to council without, pardon me?
What are you doing?
I was sending that. 8. Oh, I'm introducing the supplementary. Thank you. I'm introducing a new business item. Okay, I'm not doing that, but I will release item 80, parking amendments on, no, I'll introduce 89, proposed installation of speed bumps on Wagstaff Drive, and move to approve the bumps. 89, there we go. No, I changed that. Sorry, 89, not 80.
These are not turning out to be too quick.
It's quick. Believe me, it's quicker than if we wait.
So let's read this out loud so that...
None are ready.
They're not ready.
Okay, so Councillor Fletcher, your items are not ready, sorry.
We'll do them later.
Okay, Councillor Mihevik and then Councillor Bailao. Go ahead, Councillor.
Number 76, there was an amendment.
76, is that a timed item, Councillor?
No, it's not. It's just needed a quick amendment. Okay. Recommend that to be added to the other.
Can we just read this for the public record? So this is regarding item TE 31.76, parking amendments, Walmer Road, Castle View Avenue, and Russell Hill Drive. Motion is on the screen. This is an amendment to the staff recommendations?
Correct.
Okay. All those in favor?
Of the amendment?
Any opposed? Item as amended. Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Do you have another one? No. No? Okay, then Councillor Bailao.
If we could do item 21 and 22, so that people don't have to come back after lunch. Should be a quick one.
Okay, so TE 31.21, residential demolition application 1142 Queen Street West. And you have a motion on the screen now?
It's staff.
Okay.
Staff recommendations.
Moving staff recommendations to approve the demolition. Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. TE 31.22, residential demolition application 1144 Queen Street West. You're moving staff recommendations as well. Can you put that on the screen? All those in favor to demolish? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. There are no more quick items. We will before you go, stay in your seat. One more.
Quick one. TE 31.95, I would like to defer that indefinitely.
Okay.
It's the residential demolition application 422 and 424 Roncesvalles.
This is
94.
Number
95.
95.
It's one of the supplementary items.
And there is a motion to defer this item indefinitely. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. We're breaking for lunch, reconvening at 1:30.
I need to know I can do 5K.
Starting to exercise a week.
Good to say thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming today and participating. That was great. And I'll make sure that gets done.
Yes, thank you.
You know what? You should leave me your